Everybody, we're going to call the March 21st School Board Workshop to order. Please rise for a moment of silence, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, we have one public input card that I'm aware of. So, Mr. Yoakum, going to come kick us off this morning?
I'd like to welcome Mr. Matthias back from his, seems like months-long trip to Hawaii. Just a couple of things. One, in this, I'm going to be speaking later about the internal audit item that's on the agenda, but I just wanted to give you a couple of kind of like early warning issues. One is that there's a school district litigation going on around the country. There are a lot of really angry conservatives out there, angry at mask rules, mandates, vaccines, and everything else. I don't think you have a real problem here. You're not anywhere near like some of the districts in other states. There's two, maybe three methods that they're using. One is constitutional basis and the harm caused to students, where they are documenting that, getting doctors' opinions, and then using that as a basis to file. And there are for elected officials in most states, there are rules about, there are regulations. Mr. Johnson, if he's here, could answer that, but on preventing liability for elected officials. However, they're looking for ways to get around that. And so I just want to let you know, I don't think that there's going to be an issue here. They're maybe on some other elected officials in Florida, but I just wanted to bring that up. I'm going to pass on all the information I get because I'm documenting it and finding it. I'll pass it on to Superintendent Cornegay, and probably she can pass it on to Mr. Johnson, whoever, and follow up, because you may not want to get into the weeds on this. And of course, there's a lot of speculation because everything on the internet is true, as you well know. The other thing is, another trend that I'm picking up on, because I go to visit different schools, is that, not schools, I go to visit different cities. And traffic is a big issue. I've made presentations. I've talked about your concurrency map here, and I show it to other city councils, trying to come up with them to reduce the gridlock by not approving annexations, because I seriously believe we're going to have really bad gridlock in this county. Because so far, nobody, not even Leslie Campione, has found a way to slow that down because of state statutes and other things. But one of the side trends is the kind of aggravation among some of the cities about the parents picking up and dropping off students and double stacking on streets and sitting there and I'm quoting from people who have told me, including city managers, that people sit there for 2 or 3 hours and block the streets, and that if there's some way that you can find to mitigate that, because one of them is talking about trying to pressure the county board not to approve your school impact fees or changes in it until something is done about that. So I just want to pass on that happy news, as always.
Thank you.
Oh yeah, you might ask the county board to drop the 25% discount on impact fees for roads, because by doing that, then they're not generating enough money to pay for all the needs for growth for expanding roads.
Thank
Which
you.
county commissioner brought that up?
The one county commissioner.
Oh, was the county commissioner?
No.
The impact fees.
Oh, the impact fees,
Which county commissioner said that they were thinking about reducing their
25%.
impact fees?
oh, none of them did. No, I'm saying,
No,
no.
transportation. He's saying there's a
Oh, I'm
discount
sorry.
currently in
One
place
of
for
the city
transportation.
managers did, and I don't feel comfortable releasing his name in this thing. But he gave it to me in confidence, but he said he is talking to people. And so that's kind of the situation, but just to be aware of it, maybe you touch base or have your school principals touch base, and you probably already know, all of you probably already had your ears bent on this subject, so.
Thank you, Vance. All right.
Mr. Mock, good morning. You have a couple of items this morning, don't you?
Good morning, School Board. Good morning. I'll start out with the millage audit report. Is that available to put up on the? There we go.
There it is.
Next slide, please. Real quick, I'll go over the objective and scope of this audit. Then I'll go to a high-level review, just kind of go background on the key areas, talk about the students served. I have an audit comment for this versus a recommendation, and then what I had as far as conclusion, and I kind of broke down going forward, so kind of not really recommendations either, but just some insight to provide. Next slide. The objective and scope of this is really a compliance audit looking at the 0.75 property millage that we received. And the scope of this was the 2021 fiscal year or school year for the impact or the millage fees that were provided during that year. And I looked into how we were spending that, and as you see in the objectives, I looked into the mental health, the past teachers, school security and safety, the social worker, the psychologists, and the school nurses, tracing all these funds to the categories and the expenditures of the financial records for the school district. Next slide. What I do is on this slide was just kind of give you a high-level overview of how this money was spent and going from the budgeted money to what we actually spent. On the last page, you saw what was budgeted, and we actually spent $19.8 million. We did have some carryover from the 2019-2020 school year, which is obviously the pandemic year, as well as the startup year for the first year that the millage fund money was coming into the school district. And there was some startup there for the hiring process in the mental health and safety and security. So you can see at number one here I have where 11.65 million of the money, or almost 70%, we're spending on salaries and benefits and safety and security, and the various mental health professionals and Lake Success Academy staff they are used from the millage fund. The next large category is the about 4.8, almost 5 million, or 28.5%, which is expended on the contract services for safety for the resource officers, and then I also kind of included in there the software licenses that they incur annually. And then for that year, we also had the mental health professional outsourced services that were paid for. And then the smaller amount of the money, for 468,000, almost 469,000, or 3%, was expended for other purchases needed to support the safety and the health programs. And I skipped over in the first paragraph where almost 3 million, right off the top of the 19.8 million, is provided to the charter schools for their safety and security as well, and they provide the school district budgets. Mr. Ward requires them to send in budgets for how they're going to spend that money, and I looked at each of those budgets as well. Next slide. This is just really a kind of give you an overview of where the staffing is in 1, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9. That's where your bulk of your money, as I showed you on slide 1, or excuse me, the last slide, was going, and then the next area is your safety resource officers and your safety and security software. And then I don't have it on this slide, but another big expenditure was continuing education in some of these fields, as well as their certification costs to keep them going. And that was a reasonable amount of money. Next slide is students served. I know this was of interest. Excuse me? Yes.
There was a fair amount spent on research.
Yeah, it was a little over $400,000 for this year, in this year.
Okay, it's just an expense we don't do, so I don't know. Yeah, but it's probably standardized within their field. I'm sorry.
Yeah, given their field. I didn't look into the depth of it, but.
Okay. Just a comment. Oh, and my mic is not.
You okay?
The mic, people.
I think they're looking at it too. I saw them all start moving.
Just a button they need to click. Next slide, please. Student served. I don't think you caught up. There we go. Thank you. One interest I know the school board had was the amount of students served, and I didn't put in the safety and security. I felt that obviously served all students as well as administration staff, as well as the rest of the school district as well. So I felt that was all served, all students served, all administrative staff served. So I just looked into what student services and the academic services intervention parts of that were using, or what students serve. So I worked with them to get the numbers. And as you can see in the first line for the nurses in 2020, 2021, over 110,000 students were served by the nurses at the schools during that year. And then the mental health liaisons served about 11,300 students, social workers about 1,200 students, and psychiatrists 800, almost 900 students. And then in Lake Success, they had about 68 students come through there, and then the past teachers serviced almost 7,000 students. Question? I saw you were looking.
Yeah, as I've had a chance to look at these numbers, I've just kind of been trying to think about
Digest the numbers?
Yeah, that's right. So obviously we don't have 110,000 students in the school district, so that's the
No.
number of visits
Correct.
made to the nurses.
Correct.
Is that inclusive of all the visits? They keep track of every visit that occurs, or yes?
All the students they served. That was the idea of what
You should.
the question I took was how many times, even if it was repetitive. I mean, you come 1 month and then you come back in
Right.
another month. I mean, you're still servicing those students.
Right. Now, it's hard to believe that it costs $18 every time a kid walks into the nurse, based on the average of what we.
Well, one of the things that's interesting, and I didn't do this for nurses, but I think in the audit report you saw for the social workers and the psychologists, I put down the things that they do, day in, day out. Just because they see a student, that's not the only thing they do. They have a lot of paperwork to do. They have meetings that they go to, trainings that they conduct. So it goes beyond just that one. That's just one thing that you asked. You asked how many students they serve. Well, beyond that, there is a lot of additional work that they're required. I think it's just like me. You asked me to do audits. Well, there's a lot entailed in doing an audit. It's just not going out and doing one thing.
And so, did you apply that same method of calculating students served for all these? For instance, the psychologist. Is that 894 visits, or is that 894 students seen?
So that was students. I don't know if that's repetitive. I did not break that down.
Okay.
And
Okay,
it's
so most likely under RNs, it's visits, and then under psychologists, it's
number of students. So they probably, that is individual. So even though they may work with a student a couple times during the year, my assumption there is they didn't count that as 3 times or 2
What about
times.
the other two categories, mental health and social workers?
I know Lake Success, they did not double count. Where a student may leave Lake Success and then re-enter Lake Success. So that would obviously, I know they didn't do that. That was one thing we talked about. But the past teachers, you could have a student come back in and they have to service them more than once.
I guess I'm struggling to understand the difference in methods in the same table.
I guess I wasn't given any definition of students served, not to count students twice so it's the work that they do when they're in front of a student. And in some cases, students do come back in certain areas, like the nurses. I mean, you have a student that has a cold one time and comes back in for a cold the next, in a couple weeks or whatever, so.
Right, but they were kind of twice in here.
They could be, yes.
But the psychologist, on the other hand, I see the student.
I did not talk to him if the psychologist was singly or broken
I
down.
think it just throws off the actual cost per student because, if you're seeing it multiple times, which is the formula
Well,
we
it's
use.
the work you're doing, I think. I understand where you're going with that, but, if you saw them 1 month and then 6 months later they came back,
But we did
Would
that.
you or would you not count them again, would be your question.
I guess I'd do the same thing throughout the table,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because you did that in the first line for the nurses, but then 3 lines later, we didn't do that for the psychologists. And so it's.
I'm not 100% sure we didn't.
Oh,
I can double check that, though. I can go back and ask that question.
I'm wondering too about the nature of the service, though. If you're looking at this, like a school nurse doesn't serve a particular student. They kind of serve a revolving door of students depending on the need. Whereas a psychologist is a more in-depth, like, case study, and you've got a team of people that are talking about the needs, and so those students would be more identified for a specific cause versus a nurse who I could take a fall on the playground and go see. I'm not, you know what I'm saying?
Right,
So
right.
I get 100% what you're saying, but I don't know how else to.
I just think it should be the same methodology, because we're saying it's $18 a visit to the school nurse.
Right.
But it's not
But it's
$2,153 to visit the school psychologist.
Well,
Right?
But I think those
Well,
services
they are a higher
provided-
salary,
I do think the
too.
services provided are also indicative, so putting a Band-Aid on a student, that sounds trivial, but
Right,
if
right.
a student comes and you put a Band-Aid on,
Sure.
it probably is $2 versus when you're having a visit with someone.
Let me follow up on that and just make sure that, we're apples to apples. And I can
Okay.
update that fairly easily.
And the Lake Success, does this include the renovation costs of the building?
Capital costs are
So
not
this is
included.
truly just.
Capital costs cannot be included in your millage dollar.
Okay, so this is
spend.
truly just operations, people, salaries.
Yes, and supplies and educational materials, things like that, yes.
These social workers and psychologists, are they, I can't remember, are they at the schools or are they at the district and they're pushing in through ESE? Are these our ESE people that are,
No.
or are, no?
Student services people.
Because 25 wouldn't be at
Well,
every
everybody's
school,
student
so.
services, like.
We have 2 per
But the
school now, right?
departments are different. There's the student
Social
services with
workers, we were able
The
to
lady back
increase.
there, and then there's ESC.
Well, 1 per 2 schools, that's what I meant.
Yeah,
I was gonna say
it'd be
that
hard to
math
be
doesn't
one
work
per-
either.
two per school.
So they push in, there's two.
I think that you could clarify the nurses by saying visits to the clinic.
Okay,
Because that's what that's indicative of.
okay.
The nurses keep a log, and every time a student walks in, they have to record it. So that's how you come up with that huge number.
Right,
So, I mean, you could have kids going in there for anything. You have peanut butter allergy kids that go there to eat lunch. They go every day.
They could be
So
going to
there are a
Miss
lot of things involved in that. As far as the psychologists, those people actually do evaluations on students, and that's
Right.
dictated by federal law. So those numbers, I would think, would be pretty hard and fast, but
Yeah.
certainly,
And a psychologist could need to see a student 2 or 3 times or more, right?
Possibly.
That's what I was sort of asking, are these the
But-
people who are evaluating?
Yes, psychologists evaluate and
Okay.
observe,
But they're not,
correct?
they're not the ones, they're not giving therapy then?
No.
Okay, because we had some of that too.
So I think if you just change your description, then perhaps it would, or made 2 separate charts.
No, what I could do is add a column, and I think what I'm going to do, it'll be a little specific in the column, like you said, visits or
Evaluated.
number of evaluations, number of students evaluated, or something like that.
Right.
Could you also clarify where you have budget dollars and then you have department total? So I'm assuming that is like psychologist, the budget dollars would be your millage, and then the department total is additional operating funds that aren't included in the millage?
The department total was just for those areas right there.
You added up all the budget dollars and put the department.
Just right there, those 4 for student services and those
So
2
it's on the
for,
psychologist and the past
Yeah.
interest. Okay, so that would be a question, I don't know that would be for you, but for you.
that's not the total dollars from that department. The-
Right, but is
That
that,
just for
is
those-
that just the number that's allocated for those positions and we have additional money that's allocated for those positions? Or would it be a safe assumption to say 1.9 million divided by 44 is the amount, the average salary for our RNs and LPNs, and 2.8 million divided by 41 is the average amount for mental health liaisons? No, there's additional funds.
There are additional funds, yes. I don't know what he's included in here.
It should just be salary and benefits for those
That's what I was
25.
wondering. But I think, I don't know, Dr. Lander just gave me a look.
Mhm.
So is that not their total salary?
I'm sorry, I'm not sure what he included.
Oh, wait a minute. Why, have you talked to management?
Mhm.
So why do we not know what's included?
Yeah, I broke it down. I mean, that's the dollars for social workers and psychologists.
that's,
And mental health.
I am irritated by the continued conversation I'm irritated at everybody, if I'm being honest. So why do we get to this point when we're supposedly having conversations with management, but we don't know what numbers are included?
These came right from the financial data
Right.
provided by,
So the financial data that he requested is just the millage funds. So
Okay.
these numbers here
Oh,
are
I
just the
see.
millage dollars.
Right.
There are some other positions that are out there that may be psychologists, nurses, whatever, that are funded with other funding.
That was my question.
This is just what's included in the millage.
Thank you for clarifying, because everybody's like, I don't know what he included. Like, why do we not know what was included? I don't understand how we get to this point and don't know what's included in this, so that helps. Thank you for
yeah,
knowing.
I'm sorry, I only pulled the millage.
That's what I assumed,
Yeah.
I think that's why my question was to you, or even to Dr. Landry, or even to Mr. Ward, is there are additional dollars that are outside of these millage funds that are supporting benefits and salary for all of the people in these tables?
Correct.
Correct, all of them.
Wait, what?
That's my question.
Just like SRO
We're not
officers,
paying all of
there's
their
other
salaries?
dollars that are
That's what
paid
I'm asking.
for
I'm
SROs.
sorry, please let me clarify.
Thank you.
This doesn't make sense.
So these positions are 100% paid out of millage. There may be some other positions out there that aren't paid by the millage. There are few, not a
So
lot.
stay there, just because you're
Yes,
the
ma'am.
finance guy. So would it be appropriate for me to say RN and LPN, 41 plus 3, that's 44. I'm taking that 1.973617 divided by 44, that's the average salary for our LPNs and our RNs.
That should be
The
correct.
same thing for mental health. So I can take 2.8 divided by 41, and they make on average almost 15,000 more than our nurses and our LPNs, our mental health liaisons.
Correct.
Same for social workers, same for psychologists. Thank you. That was my question.
And just to be clear, we haven't seen this report. So when you say, well, we don't know what's included, I'm defending the department. It's like, this is the first time we're hearing the report.
But
So, put together.
is that how it's supposed to work?
No, I don't think so.
Yeah.
Why is that, Tom?
Well, the issue with that is the speed in which we wanted to bring it before the board. I had told them that I would send it out to them, but then I was asked to present it on the 21st today, which I've got an audit that I'm still working on that I've put on the back burner to get this one done. So it was just I was asked to expedite this, to bring it to the school board today, because we obviously have communications that we need to do for obviously it's going to be referendum again on the docket, or for the voters in November. So they want this information brought forward quickly
So
to
who
the
au-
school board.
Who authored the management comments
That's
then?
what I was wondering.
Who authored the management comments?
I worked with Scott on those.
Okay. I wonder if maybe in the future it would make sense to indicate who, because from this financial number side, he's seen it, he's provided the data, he knows
Right.
what's
Right.
there, but if we're
Right.
talking about from curriculum side or from student services, or
Right.
from superintendent side, we don't, I guess just when I see management comments, I assume it's.
Right, that everybody's
gone
aware.
into it.
I felt the
Yeah.
same way. I'm like,
Right.
wait a minute, they're saying no, he's answering questions. I don't, who saw the report?
I did see the report.
Yeah,
He and I
and-
did have some follow-up conversation, asking the very questions that you've just asked, Mr. Dodd, about these numbers and the little bit
Yeah.
of confusion around them. And truly, obviously, I made the same comment, $17.90 for every child that enters the clinic is not realistic. And his response was, and I understand, he needed to have some metric, and so that was just the metric that he chose to use. So we did have that conversation, and I did work with Mr. Ward on some of the comments about, that you see included here, so.
Could I ask something?
Yes.
It seems to me that, and I'm not sure who rushed you to come here today, but I would much rather have accurate numbers
Mhm.
that at least staff can speak to. And I'd like to stop this and table it for right now, and I can get with staff and come back with an accurate
I feel
representation.
the numbers, I think it's just the definition behind the numbers. The numbers are accurate.
That's what I was wondering. Like, that's it, like, what's inaccurate? I'm not sure if there's inaccuracies versus the way that it's just being pushed forward.
Right.
I'm still a little bit struggling with the disappointment in the nurse number, just because, a kid might not want to go to algebra and say, I need to go see the nurse. And how do you quantify that? It's not a quality visit versus somebody that needs the nurse because they have to take a certain medication, or you know what I'm saying? Like, I don't know.
So you want
how
that broken down into categories?
I don't know. I don't need that to say that. I see they served 110,000 students, as Mr. Dodd pointed out. We don't even have that many students, so clearly there's just more students coming in, and I don't,
Yeah, but you're asking, but your question asked to get a little bit down into the weeds as far
Right.
as what were each, not exactly, but maybe group the visits into, cuts and bruises, colds, I mean, you know what I'm
class
saying?
skipping. Yeah. I just don't know.
And I don't even know if they
think-
got that data. I'd
Right.
have to ask.
Right. If you think about the perception of this, is that what the concern is? Is that it looks like our nurses are costing 17 and our psychologists are 2,000?
And what are they seeing
I think
students
that is a
for?
concern.
Yeah,
I
absolutely.
would say that,
Okay.
yes, that's a concern.
Okay.
Has this gone through the audit committee?
Yes.
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 Okay.
Yeah. Yes. And it has gone through management. I think it's just not this side of me. I think
I did
it's
not get-
the wide, diversified
I-
part of the director and the.
Right, I had told them that I would send it out, their portion of
Sure.
it out for them to review it.
Sure.
So that they could add or subtract from it.
Well,
And did you do that?
I didn't have time.
Because it was rushed.
Where was this push? I don't understand.
The superintendent asked me to bring it to
That
you.
was over a month ago, when this was first,
Well, yeah,
when the board asked.
the
them to
superintendent
review it.
first came to me in the hallway and asked me where I was on the millage audit. And it happened to be the second day that I had just started, and I was collecting information. Actually, I was walking back from the printer because I had printed some stuff off. So I was just gathering my information at that point, and she asked if I could get it done, I think in a couple weeks, she said. So,
Yeah, I
So-
had asked him, it was the workshop, like I said, it was about a month ago. And he said he couldn't get it done that soon, and so I
Right.
said, how much time do you need? And he said a month, and I said, what about the 21st, and which is about a month. So
Yep.
it has
And then
been
I
over a
pushed-
month that
yeah.
he's had to work on this, so.
Okay. I have one other concern.
Yes.
Well, I don't know if it's a concern, it's an
Question.
observation.
Mhm.
When you do the nurses, I'm familiar with what their logs look like, and I know it's broken down into what they actually treated the child for.
Mhm.
But I have a concern because I know that nurses oftentimes have multiple students in there at the same time. So how does that relate to the 1790? The nurse could have 3 or 4 kids. Some kids stay all day, depending on whether they have a condition that their parents can't pick them up. So my question is, with this 1790, is that truly a cost per student if there are 4 kids in the room or 2 kids? I guess I just
I think it's just a
don't
tally.
understand how you can.
It's just a tally of the number of students
Okay.
that came in and out, whether they stayed
Okay.
5
So-
minutes or.
Simple math, in 30 days, you took 110
Right.
kids and divided by 1.9 million.
Right,
Yeah,
Came up with 1790,
yeah.
Okay.
right?
Mhm.
Okay.
right,
Okay.
right.
And some of this is,
Right.
you keep in mind, you're not looking at a whole year, you're looking at a school year. And a school year is, what, 160
80.
days? Or,
80.
yeah.
You could make it 160.
So, I mean, you're looking at a shorter time frame. I mean, when you add all that up, I mean, it's a lot. I mean, that's a
It's a
lot of
lot.
students coming in and out the doors
Yeah,
in
a
a
lot of
fairly
them
short
do.
period of time.
So that might be helpful, I think, as after this conversation, so that the accurate picture can come through about the type of visits, the quality of the visits, I don't know, but I think
Okay.
probably Dr. Landry could.
Okay, I didn't pick that up when you asked about students served. I
No,
didn't pick up
I hear
that you
you.
wanted everything broken down into.
I don't know if we do. I don't know if we do. I just hear the concern. To me, it's not. I get that. I can see that. Very broad range of students that a nurse serves
Okay, I'm
versus
gonna
a
walk away
specific student. I
then
don't
not
know.
knowing what you're asking if you don't.
You guys tell me.
I'm just looking for the same methodology applied, or for it to be clear.
Yeah,
that
you want it to be
these are
clear what
visits, Other places, it's actual students, whether
Yeah.
they were seen 1 time or 3 times.
Yeah.
You know, because.
Like visits could be more than, one student more than once, the others might be one student, or it could be a student that is repetitively treated throughout a school
Well, no,
year.
visits would be like going to the doctor. I don't care if I go 1 time in a year, if I go 20 times in the year. If I go 20, count me 20 times, if it's visits, because
Mhm.
that's like a visit to the doctor. That's what, like, the nurses are. But the psychologist may be repeats, if you want to do per person, because we don't have every visit. But either way, do it the same way.
Do it the same way.
You know, so it's apples to apples.
And just to be clear, Mr. Muck was just looking at financials. He was literally looking at the 3/4 millage and how the dollars were spent. So I think it's just maybe clarifying that is what I'm hearing.
Can I ask for I understand that the Lake Success students break down to $14,000 cost per student. Those students are particularly high-need students. Do we
Correct.
get, it's what, normally around 7,500 for the average student? Do those students get more money from the state
Yes.
for like?
Yeah, when I did the Lake live stream, they're a 250, weren't they a
They're not
251 student?
254s or whatever.
Yeah,
that-
254 or
It's
something
not
like that.
weighted?
I'm
No,
hearing
these
from
are not
all our
ESC.
staff, no.
These
The
are-
staff is saying no,
That's
and
right.
he's saying yes.
No, it's no.
Can I come speak to this?
Yeah.
These are kids alternatively placed.
Right.
for-
Right, but that doesn't mean that they're not also.
Our Lake
AED or
Success
EBD or-
Academy is, remember, the academy is for students who are alternatively placed because of a disciplinary action. So we could, maybe some, but for the most part, these are students, the max capacity is 50. And so we put through 68, when you think about a year, some kids stay for a year, some kids stay 45 days, some kids stay 90. We have some
kids
dropout
come back.
prevention students that are also there trying to get caught up with credit recovery, but it's a low amount of staff number because basically we have 4 teachers. Think about the idea that you have to have an ELA certified, the certification requires people there, and this class size is very small. But they also have wraparound services. I mean, those students, the idea is that they spend time in restorative circles. There is a mental health liaison there. There is, so of course the cost per student is going to go up because the services provided there are much more intensive and have a small number of students there. They are not classified in any way, shape, or form because of a disability. It is a disciplinary action that puts people over there, or a dropout prevention student that needs to get caught up, that a high school has agreed to bring a student over to get them caught up and put them back.
So if I'm looking at that 14,000, that student still does bring the 775, right? Yes.
Yes, the
Okay.
FT, they are unenrolled.
They do.
And then enrolled in there, so
Okay.
they're not new money, they're just moved over money, right? To a new cost, to the school
Yeah.
center.
And that is a direct reflection in our graduation rate and then student success as well, because these are students that we would typically lose, right?
I
or that
support this
wouldn't-
program, and
Yeah,
I just
I know,
wanted to ask
yeah.
about the
I'm
numbers.
trying
Is it
to
an
hear you
expensive
guys about the
program?
value, right,
Yes, is it worth it? 100% absolutely.
Right.
It would be a very big detriment
Right.
if this program or option for kids was lost in the numbers game. Do you know what I mean?
Yes, I agree.
It should be noted in Florida, it costs $19,000 a year to incarcerate, and that's the kids that we're talking about.
that is a great statistic.
Mhm.
And
Thank
if you'll
you.
remember, we were previously outsourcing this program at a cost of 1.2 million and servicing 40 students a year with that contract. And so there's more students served at a lower cost as
That's
well.
a great
Yeah.
number.
So I think you bring the
Classify 'em.
point that I feel like I'm realizing the element I'm missing from this audit is the efficiency piece, or the, like as you've done other audits, transportation, so on and so forth, here's your potential savings, or here's where you've gained efficiency. There it is. When I think a member of the public looks at this and say, wow, it costs $14,500 to educate this kid. Why? The school district only gets $7,500. We say, well, actually, this is cheaper. This is $300,000 cheaper, and we're putting 30 more kids through there. And I think that's the piece that, I would like to
Yeah,
maybe see reflected.
It wasn't a cost savings audit. I didn't approach it as looking for, are we saving money or are we not saving money? It was more for how are we spending the money coming in from the millage. So sometimes you're crossing lines when you're doing that in what you're asking for in an audit.
I'm not really sure if this is.
Because
to be honest, so much an
the
audit.
objective of the audit was compliance. Are we in compliance in how we're spending the millage fund dollars,
Are
where
we
we're
need
saving?
to
So
change
did
the
you
scope.
look then at all these people and ensure that they are doing the job that they were assigned to do? For instance, did you look at all the past teachers and say, are you actually doing past, or are you doing something else? What are you doing when you're not doing past? Because
Well,
I know we have a past
that-
teacher
that
out there who's
wouldn't-
not doing any past, but it's being funded through millage. So that's the compliance piece, I think, that is not there.
But
So to me.
he's financial, this is
Right.
that same
But
conversation about
it's just a
curriculum
report he
and
got from
professional
Scott.
development. Right,
And
right.
put it in different form.
Right.
I mean, I don't see what's different. I don't see where Scott couldn't have just given us those numbers and said, this is what it costs for the nurses and the past teachers and the social workers and.
He could have.
He could
That's
have,
all
but
I
you said
that's all
ask
we
him
got.
to.
I think that's all we got, isn't it?
So we need to change the scope of the audit, is basically.
No, I don't,
We
so
need to
then but
specify
wait a
what we
minute,
want.
but then you're asking Tom to evaluate a program.
Why,
Which-
don't we do that all the
Which-
time?
No,
No.
he doesn't have the expertise.
Right, and we've talked about that, like, it's not,
He has
We-
the
we hit
expertise
this-
to go like, hi, are you doing your job?
If the intent was to say we're doing a really good job with the money we have, and we're spending it where we're supposed to.
That's the way I looked at it.
Then,
yes,
then that meets that threshold for me.
yes.
I don't know that if we have a past teacher that isn't doing past work, that's really micromanaging down to.
But we don't know how much of that is occurring. If I know at least there's one past teacher out there who 100% of the time isn't doing the past.
But I don't know
what
that-
happens at all the other schools?
Sending a survey though is
Well,
within
you know,
the
so-
scope of an
Well,
audit.
why
So-
don't we ask the superintendent to find out, because it's not in Tom Mock's expertise, in my opinion,
I agree.
for him to define what these teachers are doing or not doing.
But that's the compliance piece. Here's the money. Did we spend it the way we said we were gonna spend it? You know.
I guess this goes down to sort of a fundamental, what is his job description?
Dr. Felder's coming back, yeah. Well, yeah, and we can
Apparently I
talk
have a
about
lot to say about this audit, right? I apologize. So, I just want to address the path. I just hate for things to be out there that I don't want it to be a broad brush about every school. So first of all, if any of us go out this year and audit what the past teacher did, they subbed. Because we are in the middle of a pandemic, or were, and twice during this year, there was a lot of that. I do know there are some cases where the past teacher, we said to the public we would allocate one per school. And we did that. So are we in compliance with what we said that we would do? We are absolutely in compliance with what we said we would do. Some of those past teachers, it is a good thing if our school-wide discipline system is working and kids are not assigned to pass. Remember, pass is an opportunity, it's a alternative it's a positive alternative to in-school suspension. So if they're not in pass, that's not really a bad thing. Like, you don't want to fill that classroom up, just like you don't want to fill Lake Success. Like, we don't want to expand Lake Success to 400 kids, right? To make it more economical. That's not the point. So, do we need to think about, as hopefully, I will tell you, every dollar of this money is worth it, and it scares me, which is why you kind of hear it in my voice, because this money has provided so many services for the last 2 years for a situation that we didn't know it was coming. And I just feel like the wraparound services that we offer are amazing, and I think anybody at a school would speak to that. Could we reallocate some of this? Are those teachers doing some other types of work, like past teachers are doing restorative practices? I do know they're pushing in and supporting kids. I don't think we have any past teachers that are just not working, the 7.5 hours a day. I think they are supporting kids. I think they are trying to help with behavior interventions before we get a behavior problem. And I would be happy to look more into that if you want a more detailed report of how they're spending their time. This year, though, is not going to be a great account of that. Just like if you did admin, literacy coaches, anybody extra in a school that doesn't have a classroom, they were in classrooms, which is exactly the team approach we want in Lake County, right? Everybody does whatever it takes to make school happen this year. So this would be an interesting year to audit their hours of work, I would say.
versus what they did.
So, versus what they were assigned to do. But was it useful to have them? Yes, right? I mean,
I
yes.
think, go ahead.
I don't think that's my dispute, and I think, just from clarity, I'm trying to say that I know that there's value for these people abroad every day, and certainly the complications of the pandemic only made that more so. I'm just wondering if some of their job functions that they performed were aligned with the ballot language. And so I guess my advocacy perhaps would be to broaden the ballot language to give maybe a little more flexibility for next go-around, but yeah, I mean,
He
if
makes
somebody's
that-
really just.
And
I
that
think
is a
that-
whole different conversation,
Well-
and I would definitely be advocating for however that looked to you.
I think that would be great
Flexibility would
to
be
see.
great for on my side.
And
right?
that's what I was gonna say, is after this many years, 2-3 years of having the program that was fresh, that was new off the ground, here's this money, we have these opportunities, what lessons have we learned? What are we gonna change? How can we say, we have looked at this, we have the value, we know what we're doing, but this is how we're gonna progress that forward, as we've actually been able to do it, because it was new. I think I've said that all along. This was brand new. Dr. Landry brought this plan forward, she put it together quick. She analyzed data, brought it forward, and it was successful. But that was like the reactive. We actually have money that we can offer. So now, what are we doing proactively based on what we've seen over the last 2 and 3 years that we're going to redefine or broaden to more based on what we need. So I don't disagree. That's the message I think that we all have to bring forward and champion in order to get this ballot approved. That's what I'm looking for, is something that we can say, this is what we've done, this was great work, and this is how we're making it even stronger and better for our students. But I don't think that was Mr. Mock's job. Back to, this whole conversation was about compliance. I think there's pieces to this, and the first thing we need to be able to say to the public is, we were in compliance with the millage dollars. We spent it on the money that we said we were gonna, put it past each and every school, we put it past each and every school. This is the work, this is the money, this is where it all adds up, it's all here, it's all accounted for. That's transparency with our public tax dollars that our stakeholders are looking for. Now let's talk about this program and what we did for kids and how we're gonna keep doing it and how we're gonna do it a little bit differently based on what we've learned. Rather than just keeping to do the same thing, because it's what we're doing. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, and I think the absence of this particular funding source and the positions, I think if you thought about it in the absence of all of this,
Kept thinking it was mine.
when we didn't have nurses in every school, can you, just.
Especially the last 2 years.
Right. Yeah, right, so exactly, so I think whether we were forward-thinking, I'm gonna say that we were, but, yeah, I just can't imagine what it would, so I agree, I think is there a way we can learn and grow from the last several years of having it? Yes. Do I think we could look at some things? Yes. So I'm with you on that. I just felt like I needed to speak to schools not using people properly. I think these positions have been well utilized in different ways. I do think it's hard to quantify in terms of a dollar amount, so.
And I think the pandemic affects the numbers. I didn't say it, but I really think, because if you remember, we left in March of 2020, right? And they all didn't, I remember the superintendent giving you updates on reports of how the students were coming back later in 2020, and they weren't all coming back that quick. The goal was by the end of 2020 to get most of them back, if not all.
We had a whole year where we were at 75%.
Yeah,
capacity.
so,
Nurses,
I think that
I'm sure
affects.
they were busy.
Yeah, that's reflected in these numbers here, so, it was a tough thing to do because of the pandemic. And it's obviously, I think you're not satisfied with the numbers, but I think we're all forgetting how easy it is to forget that pandemic and how it affected everyone, including the jobs and responsibilities they were performing, because they may not have had enough students to see, because we were only at 75%. So 25% of the students weren't there, so they were, it's great we utilized them instead of them, just not doing anything. They were doing something. Right? But I think everyone I sat down with this has been, and I think I reflected on the next slide in my audit comments, that we built these programs that are directly linked to the 3/4 millage taxes that we're receiving. Any reduction or elimination of the funds sourced to the school district would have a direct impact on these programs. Going forward, and internal audit my review determined that the school district has been good stewards in the appropriate utilization of the millage funds for the intended usage as publicized to Lake County residents.
And I'm just gonna say
that's
that,
where
too.
I thought, where
It is.
I was heading in this audit. It doesn't sound like I met the school boards.
No, I don't know that that's true, Tom, and I'll say this too, because I know, we mentioned earlier, couldn't Mr. Ward have just given us these numbers? Yes, he could have, but I think there's to the audit committee and to the audit work, there's an outside person that's looking at the numbers too. So
Yeah.
it's not just taking the man that works for the district and the department and saying, he's saying, yes, we're spending it the right way. It's been audited. The audit committee has
Yeah.
reviewed it, the money was spent in compliance. So it's almost like just a double look at with.
And
two
not only
different
through
sets
the
of eyes.
meetings, but I also used the presentations to validate the data that they were presenting to
Right.
the school board as well.
Right.
And everything ticked and tied, so,
Which is what that's.
which is what,
The point.
you're getting good information not only from Mr. Ward, but also from the people in their departments, and when they're bringing reports to you to
Right.
tell you how they're planning on budgeting that money and how they're planning on utilizing it, that it is being utilized for what they're saying. So that's what audits are for.
So, questions?
I do have one, and I think maybe it's my memory failing me or whatever, but like the mental health liaisons, Dr. Landry, for some reason I thought it was like we had 3 mental health liaisons, and then we had do we actually have 41 mental health liaisons?
Yes.
One in every school?
Yes.
For some
And then
reason, I
we
thought
have 3 specialists at the district level who.
that oversee them. Okay, those are the 3 I was thinking. Okay, thank you. I'm good.
Any other questions, board, on this audit?
Excuse me?
Any other questions on this audit?
I just have one comment. And from finding that we're good stewards, which is what your final conclusion was, we didn't quite get to that, but if we're good stewards, that I remember when Dr. Landry brought a presentation to us, and I think at that time it was like 10,000 kids that we'd actually served, and one student actually was identified and was Baker acted. And I would bring everyone's attention to the fact that it was one student, Adam Lanza, and it was one student, Nicholas Cruz. So I think that this work is so important for the safety and security of our kids and getting them the help they need. So that by itself, for $253 a visit, is pretty much money well spent. That's my comment on it.
Great.
I second what he says, and I just want to add that you will never get enough props for preventing disaster. Like, you'll never get enough praise. So we'll never know if this worked, but so far it's worked. You know?
But if it doesn't, I'm getting your drift. If it doesn't, and something it grew to the point where we had an
Incident.
incident, yes, then,
Like, this may be preventing us
Yeah.
from having that, and I think these people are worth the money.
yeah. It's like putting in traffic lights and that to save accidents, right? For somebody, how many lives have you saved, right?
Yeah, and
You
you
don't
never
know,
know.
but you don't know, but you know from past experience, there's been accidents.
Yeah.
So-
I think this is a good way to prevent, I think we are preventing potential.
Yeah, and if you save just one life, what is the value of that? Is that $1 million? Is that $20 million? Is that $30 million? Who knows?
So my next question on this are just about next steps, right? So when do we just talk about the language, and is this August or is this November, and?
I don't, the ballot
June
language?
28th. I'm totally kidding. I thought this will have it. He didn't hear me. I said, or June 28th.
Yeah.
So I did provide you the ballot language from the previous referendum.
I'm sorry, before we move to that, I do have a comment, if
Yeah,
I
okay.
may.
Yeah, please.
I would ask in the future, when you're gonna bring things like this, if at all possible and time permits, that you allow staff to look
I
at
do.
it.
I do.
Because if you're doing a report on a department that I'm responsible for, I think it's a good idea if they know what's gonna be said before it's said. So
I-
if we could just please try to fit that in.
I do that 100% of the time. As a matter of fact, the audit that I'm working on, the warehouse and the grounds, I just met with them after they reviewed the report. So I just didn't have time to do that. That would have taken another couple weeks probably. I mean,
Well, I don't know how long that takes, but I believe if staff knew that it was something that needed to be expedited, they could work with you. So let's at least give it some effort.
okay.
Thank you.
I would go one step further than asking because you're so nice. I don't think we should have
Required.
an audit report unless the departments that are affected have reviewed it.
Okay.
And so if you couldn't get it done, then that should have been reported to the chair. And the chair could have gotten with the superintendent and organized that before you came.
Okay.
Thank you.
No worries.
That's okay.
So we do need to look at the previous language, and the board will need to make a decision. This will be on hopefully Monday's board agenda for approval. If you want to spend some time today looking at it, how you might want to amend the language, any changes that you want to make. The reason for this, and there is a sense of urgency, he's right, that we do need to be out there advocating and campaigning, and a lot of, Ms. Owens has been patiently waiting to get this campaign launched, and so she's got a lot of work already invested, and just waiting for the final details to ensure that we have approval from the board before going out to the voters and beginning our campaign. And so I bring you the language just to have some discussion today. We can gather in any information from you individually and then bring back a recommendation at an upcoming meeting if you're ready for next Monday, or we can delay that until the board is ready to make a decision on that. We're ready when you are, and so obviously the dates need to change. And in addition to that, just from hearing your comments, One of the things that we did discuss adding for the purpose of transparency would be to the sentence where it talks about for the enhancement of school safety and security, academic services and mental health services, creating a sustainable funding source for student stays critical to improving safety of our children, academic interventions, prevention programs, and emergency response, and adding that piece in regards to the academic services that many of our past teachers are providing, or they are providing on a, pretty much on a daily basis.
Isn't there a specific number of words that has to be on ballot?
I found this on the web.
Sorry.
Let's hear the answer.
Ask Siri.
Well, thank you very much, Siri.
What did you find on the web?
We're not telling you.
And there's a certain number of words, it's limited. And is this gonna be in August, or wasn't there a change that it is in the general election in November?
There was a change, but I believe the change in legislation occurs after the November ballot. Is that correct, Mr. Ward?
That is correct.
So this will be in August?
Well, no, we have to go to the general election.
So it'll
But
be
we
November.
originally passed it in the primary then.
Yeah, there's,
Yeah, so this, once it's signed by the governor, the new legislation says that any kind of referendum like that would have to go in the general election. If
He
we're-
hasn't signed it yet?
So that law will probably become July 1st, right, as most
we
laws
can
do?
anticipate it probably would.
Oh, okay, so it's gonna be November.
Yes, sir.
And then, am I right that there's only so many words?
I believe there is a limit, but I don't know off the top of my head what that limit is.
Okay.
We'll look at that to make sure we don't exceed that.
Right.
And amend it accordingly, so.
Could I suggest just amending the, are you done?
Yeah, I was just thinking,
Okay. If you're, just the word improving safety to maybe like maintaining, because we've already done the thing, and now we just want to hold it.
And I know we had a conversation originally about it being 1 millage, and then we reduced it to 3/4 millage, and are we good with 3/4 mill?
Well, yes, we would certainly be advocating for that, especially as what we know, and we're currently doing our annual negotiations with the Sheriff's Department and all of our municipalities, and we know that those costs continue to go up every year. And so I would be concerned that we would not have enough money to cover the cost of the sheriff's office, or our school safety officers, as well as those other positions you saw today, if we don't consider the full 0.75. One recommendation was maybe considering levying, for the board to levy up to 0.75, so that, may say 2 years from now, we're financially in a position where we're able to reduce it, that you could actually look at it on an annual basis with that, if you
I would like
change the
that.
verbiage.
I would like that.
I would like that too. Is it accurate to say that the amount of money in the 3/4 mill has increased just due to the rising taxes and so forth? Haven't we gotten more money each year?
Yeah, I was gonna ask the same thing. Or what about the cost of salaries? Like, because salaries are going up
Salaries are
big
going
right
up.
now.
Those are certainly going up, and we know that a sheriff's department, and they're having the same issues that we are in terms of recruitment and retention, and so I know that they're trying to be more competitive, and so we can expect that those contract salaries are going to go up as well.
Answer your quick question on the revenue, yes. As property values have been increasing, our revenue does increase along with that. Remember, that's cap.
Right.
You know, it doesn't increase 7 and 8% a year, but it does have smaller incremental increases each year.
Do you think that increase will handle
That's what I was
the
gonna
increase in salaries from the sheriff and the,
That's an unknown.
Okay.
So I like the up to. I think that's fair. At least maintains your capacity to leverage that amount and doesn't reduce it ahead of rising costs that we're all seeing.
Should there be some sort of indication that this is a continuance versus not a new tax?
That's what she said, monitoring, but I agree that it'd be nice to be clear.
Yeah, because if I guess if I just read it, should an additional 3/4, I'm like, oh, gosh.
Oh, yeah.
3/4? But little do I realize I'm already paying it.
Yeah.
You know, so, I
right,
don't
because this
know
was
how
the
we.
language from when we tried to
Right,
get it
right.
on the, yeah.
Right.
So shall continue, shall continue a 3/4
Or just renewal.
renewal,
A renewal, sure.
yeah.
I think you're gonna get trapped in words, so,
Renewal's a good word.
yeah, just renewal.
And
A
speaking
few
of
times, though,
getting,
you have to read it 5 times before you understand it, like any other language. It's the same way.
speaking of getting trapped in words, I think it's important to maintain what we have, but I don't know that we should take the word improving out. We're always striving to do better. I think by taking that word out, then we're saying that we've arrived. So would it be possible to keep both words? That we are
Oh, sure.
a sustainable funding source critical to maintaining and improving the safety of our students or our children?
Yeah, I think what I was striving for was what Mark just did, which, with the shall and it, like, not an additional, it's not additional, we're continuing, we're maintaining.
Mr. Yocum.
I just, at the audit committee meeting, I just want to throw in one thought, because you're describing a process to sell this to be renewed. And there was a very, I think, illuminating quote I just want to share, and it came from your appointee, Tracy Carrasquillo. And she said that the program provides a method to remove disruptors from the classes so the others can learn. And I think that that is, in a nutshell, what you ought to sell, and I just want to pass that on before, you can keep that in your sales pitch.
Thank you. Any other suggestions? I know you said that, I'm sure that Sherry will send out something.
Yes, so we'll make we've captured the changes here, we'll send something out to you all, give you a couple of days to review it, provide any input on it, and if you're good with it, we'll have it on the agenda for approval next Monday, and if not, we'll take whatever time is needed to get it how you want it.
I think a day or two is plenty of time for us to look at that, so let's just plan on that.
Okay, all right. Up next. You're still up, right? Tom?
I'm up.
Yeah.
Next person. If you don't mind, the chairman of the audit committee is going to join on this, and so that he can provide the insight that the audit committee, I guess, provided during this, but yet no final decision was provided to bring forth to the school board. So they were kind of throwing it, I guess, back in your laps to consider and make a decision going forward. Can we bring that presentation up, the future structure of the internal audit department? I put together, actually, we went through 3 meetings on this, just trying to introduce it and then, go through some kind of brainstorming. Then I was obviously hopeful in the last session that we could come to some idea to bring forward to the school board for your thoughts and consideration and approval. But I just started out initially with, providing them that, I think the school board was asking for more audits to be done by the audit department. I've been questioned about the administrative time that I do and the clerical work and efforts to perform audits. The audit committee has commended the director should not be performing clerical work. I mean, I've gotten that. I've gotten a lot of that, and there's no way to get away from administrative and clerical work when there's only one person. So, I don't have anybody to offload that to. So until we expand the size of the department, there's no way that I cannot do those mundane tasks that are needed to do every day. Such as trying to get these audit reports out to, other people to get reviewed and get that back. If I had someone to say, hey, I need you to get that all done prior to this all being concluded. The objectives of the, is to determine that the district office needs more staff, the type of staff necessary. This was all introduced to them. Okay, we go to the next slide. Just real quick, the future internal audit work. This was number one. I thought we need to decide what work. I was brought on board to do cost savings audits initially. I knew I would probably have to do some other audits along the way, but my main task that I was asked to do was do audits to find ways to save the school district money, because at that time I think the general fund was being used almost completely, to run the school district, and the general fund balance was very low. So what ways could we save money that obviously would return funds back to the general fund? That's my next page is, what type audits does the school board want? Because I'm hearing maybe there's other audits, financial audits, the audit committee's wondering, why I don't have financial audits on my audit plan, compliance audits has been brought up, investigative audits, information system audits. There's all kinds of audits. That should go into consideration of what the structure of the internal audit department should look like. And that could even include outsource audits, so outsourcing the audits. A number of these, if not all of these, and that's been brought up. So that was discussed as well with the audit committee. Next slide, what level of knowledge do you want people in the audit department to have? That's something in the business world you talk about. Do you want CIAs, CPAs, CISAs? There's all kinds of experience and knowledge that can be brought in. When you consider that, you have to consider cost as well, because some of those people require like a certified information systems auditor are not cheap. And you're not going to go out and find one for $68,000 that's worth their weight in anything. You're talking a $80,000 to $90,000 person if you want to, and that's why you might want to outsource those audits, because you don't have that many audits to do in a year, so why bring someone on as a full staff? Why not outsource that work? So that was talked about. Okay, so let's go in. I presented 4 structures, 4 options to the audit committee. Next slide, please. The first option is keeping the audit department as it is, and this is the current structure, option number 1. That's the director of internal audit. We outsource some audits, report to the audit committee, obviously up to the school board.
How much do you outsource?
Right now, it varies anywhere from 2 to 3 audits a year.
Dollar amount.
Dollar amount? Well, that varies the type of audit you're doing, but it's been as low as $30,000 and as high as about $80,000 or $90,000, I believe, per year, not total.
Total or
No,
per audit?
per audit. An audit's about $25,000 to $30,000 roughly, depending on what you're looking at.
Okay, $30,000 a year. in 2 to
For
3.
one, that'd be one audit. So like I said, we've been doing about 2 to 3 audits. I think one year we did 1 audit. We outsourced 1, but we've been doing about 2 to 3 audits per year.
Okay, thank you.
So that's why I'm saying about 80,000, low on the 30,000.
Each, right?
Each audit's about 25 to 30,000.
Okay.
Each audit.
I thought the CAFR was like 75.
That's not me.
You don't do that.
That's me. That's Mr. Ward's area, the CAFR.
Oh, but it's, okay, but that's another audit that is done and that is reviewed by your committee.
There's lots of audits done. There's also state audits that we don't obviously have to pay for those, but.
Yeah, I know, but
And
as
when I
we're
try to-
looking at developing the audit committee, we do need to consider the fact that regular finance has
Correct.
like ad nauseum
And I-
excess audits.
Yes, and I brought that point up as well too. I didn't put it in this slide, but I brought that up, the different type audits that we have done outsourced.
Okay.
The state comes in every 2 to 3 years, and does their operational and financial auditing. And then they also do IS audit, information systems auditing while they're here. So there's other audits, and I brought that forward, and that needs to be thought about, because we don't want to obviously do audits over and over again. In other words, the state just did it, so why would I do it again, right? And that's how I tried to build the audit plan. I think the pandemic year kind of messed me up, because I had some audits on there that I didn't realize the state was coming in here, and I had to make some quick adjustments. But that's just because, again, the pandemic year was just it threw everything off.
Yeah.
And I think, that's what. So a second option was bringing in an auditor/admin person. In other words, kind of a person that needed some more training, or actually a lot of training to be an auditor, but could also do a lot of the admin work. And that's things like populating worksheets, I call it clerical work. I do that now. I populate worksheets. I have to. I don't have anybody else to do that. Although I could get information and ask someone else to say, hey, here's the worksheet. Could you put all this information in the worksheet for me? That would be a better use of my time, is not to populate a worksheet, if that makes sense. Next slide. Option 3 would bring in an actual internal auditor, someone that has experience, let's say 2 to 3 years experience, if that makes sense. Someone that has knowledge, has done audits for at least 2 to 3 years, whether they're a CPA, whether they're a CIA, either for a business or for government, and I bring them in, and for the next 2 years, I'm available to train that person and bring them along. And hopefully that would be the person that would potentially, if they were, we were able to find the right person, could take my role in 2 years. If not, then obviously we'd have to find someone to hire to take the director's spot in 2024. And then option number 4 was the last, is really just to kind of bring in that really solid person, maybe 5, 6, 7, 8 years experience. Still hire an admin type auditor to, this way we'd be doing a lot more audits, and we still need that admin person to do a lot of the clerical type work, as well as have a little bit of expertise in doing some audit where they would be a training. Again, you're building more of a rotational department where that person, as I leave, that person moves up, that person would be the next auditor, and then you'd bring in another admin person. Does that make sense? You're building bench strength. You're building a good, solid department where you've got some something to fall back on if somebody leaves or there's promotions to go along the way. And the next slide, put in here, we just already talked about, so I won't spend much more time, is the outsource auditing costs, and we talked about that. And like I said, it was about $27,000 to about $45,000, so it just gives you a range, and it depends on the extent of the audit. How many hours, what's the scope, how far, how much work do you want them to do on that audit, and so that dictates, what the total cost is gonna be. Like I said, currently been doing about 2 to 3. We could expand that and not hire an auditor and do more audits on an outsourced basis. Next slide. These were the options and what I came up with the cost. And again, this was about, 6 months ago or a little bit over 6 months ago. Hoping these costs would still stick in the market when we're ready to go out, if we're able to go out and look for someone. But currently, this is where we're at right now, roughly. And these are round numbers. I'm not by any means exact. So option number 1 is stay where the director is currently making 100. Option 2 would be bringing in that admin person, not obviously someone with a lot of knowledge and experience. So obviously that would bring down the salary level for bringing that person in. Option 3 is going out and getting a level 1, level 2 type auditor with some knowledge and experience. And then 4 would be, kind of combining 2 and 3 to come up with 4. Final thoughts, I just real quick, just to throw these out there. Obviously, if we add people to the district auditor's office, we're going to have to consider, the increase in size and additional office space that will be needed. So they obviously won't fit in my room back there.
Take out your bookshelf?
Yeah, take out my bookshelf. And maybe kick out that wall and go out into that little hallway in the back there.
Tom, with the work you're doing, have you calculated at your salary level, how much is it costing us per audit that you're doing right now?
I haven't done it in a while, but I think I did it back a while before, and I told you it was easily. My costs are about $45 an hour roughly, compared to 100. I think what was 100 and something we were doing for 182 for the X.
So how many audits did you do last year?
I do about 7 to 8 roughly on average per year. And my other final thought was, and we don't use this right now, but there's a lot of audit software out there. Mr. Chairman here asked me, how much some of these cost. I don't want to start calling these folks, because once you start calling them, they don't stop calling you. If they think you're interested, they want to sell it. And in this environment, you can understand it. They're probably having a tough time selling. So if I start going out there, they're going to want to come in and look and understand our department, and obviously make the package. But, you know, some of these packages are relatively cheap if it's a standalone on your laptop versus putting it on your network where it would be shared amongst auditors. So, I mean, standalones are a lot cheaper than obviously networking a software package. And today they have it in the cloud, so I don't even know. I mean, I would guess $10,000 to $15,000 depending on some of the packages. And they can speed up audits. I mean, they can take some of the clerical work out of it, you know, and some of the ways they track. And then there's analytical packages out there, you know, Benford's Law and some others that are very useful in some audits, not all audits. But so you got to take that into consideration, you know, how much would you use it versus how much it costs. So you don't want to spend a lot of money if you're only going to use it once or twice a year. But if you can use it, but even then, I mean, when I got the Benford Law for when I was at Hughes Supply, I asked the staff to try to find one way to use it in each audit that they did. It didn't always work out that way, but they came up with a lot of great stuff when they used it. It's just a data analytical tool. So just that's FYI. But there's training behind it too. And then so that's that. I know Vance has an additional thing to talk about for the audit committee. I don't know if you want to go there or you want to talk about this first, you know, for staffing, and then jump to the audit committee piece. Okay.
That's fine.
I think that's a different topic, right?
Yeah, this different, or
Yeah,
you
this
want to
is-
just add what
Oh, I thought
the
it was
the
I
audit
thought
committee
so, too.
talked
It's
about and what
audit-related,
I've
but
shared so
different.
far.
Not the staffing.
Do you want to talk about that? Just not this yet.
I was gonna say, if you could, whatever the audit committee's thoughts are on the staff.
Well, the audit committee, one of the things is that there's only 2 of the 5 of us that have actual audit experience. Okay, so like we spent quite a bit of time, 80 minutes, going over the CAFR, which now has got a new name.
The ACFR.
ACFR. And partly it was to bring up issues for those who are not auditors, and that's my approach, is so that they can understand some of the issues, and also by probing, we could get some unsolicited, you know, responses from the auditors that give me even a better feeling of certainty about how the financial systems are working here that are reported on by the CAFR. One of the big things is that it does not provide any input at all on forecasting. In my view, you're facing inflation, you're facing all sorts of problems that are going to come up. And again, I look at different news sources than probably most of you do, but it doesn't bring you that. So you have to have a process and going through just when you're doing the budget process.
How about staffing? How about the audit committee's thoughts
Oh.
on staffing?
Right.
On who? Your staffing?
The staffing plan that we
Yeah,
just
the
reviewed.
staffing that you guys looked at.
Remember,
Oh.
we had a workshop on this
Yeah.
one months ago. We lobbed it back to the audit committee.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And they're lobbying.
What the audit committee
Yeah.
had to say.
Well,
This is like the 3rd time we've actually
Yeah.
talked about it.
yeah,
Just so you know.
we didn't really discuss that a whole lot because we've already talked about it 3 times.
Well, what did you
And we
say
could
in
not
any of the-
reach a consensus, in my view, it's partly because we have people that don't have background in audit. And could not even come to you and sell you on, this is why you need this or that. My own version is that I think you ought to go with the full, the $200,000 program there of an additional good qualified auditor. Because so far, and he's probably should have included in here a chart of all the dollar savings they've had so far. But when you have him having to put in, even preparing these slides and everything else, that does take time away from auditing, and we've seen the results from the audits. So you're getting what, 2/3 of an auditor, and the rest is administration stuff that it has to be done. It's overhead. And so my view is that, but we didn't have people ask the questions, and one of them was absent, the other auditor was absent. And so as a consequence, we didn't really have we moved to accept this, I think, and for him to present it, because you've heard this more than once, and my viewpoint, and then there's others. My view is that probably there's a lot of money being left on the table, and if you did that, continue to do that and expand the program, there would be other cost savings. And I'm thinking in terms of even with Tom, if he didn't have to do the administration stuff, there would be more audits. And plus, if he has a solid auditor that came in that actually had some operational audit experience, I think you would find things. Plus, they can do compliance work, and there are maybe some compliance issues like this new program that you just talked about. If you want to have a quickie, 3 or 5 day compliance review, you could request for that. But right now, he just has to juggle a lot of things in the air. And so that's my suggestion, but
So
I
what
realize,
did
of
the rest
course,
of the committee say?
They didn't want to reach any consensus. They felt like it was the school board's decision.
Is that what they felt? Or what?
They didn't feel comfortable bringing forward a recommendation.
yeah, the previous meeting is when we really discussed all the issues that he's showing you here. And there was only 3 of us there, and we couldn't get consensus. We had my view, and then we had others about not doing anything or waiting and just going as is. So, and again, I view it as mostly, lack of experience and not knowing how to, because when you're going to come to you, for instance, and say, I think you ought to spend this much and hire a new person, they need to have some basis for it other than, just what they heard at a meeting. They have to have some professional justification, which is partly what my other issue here is that I'll cover in a bit.
Okay, so board, I think that it's up to, this is ultimately our decision, and so I will start if you guys want me to, but if somebody else has something to say, you can say something else, so.
You can start.
You guys are all looking at me
That's
like,
right.
okay, go
Go
ahead.
for it.
I'm gonna.
Well, you act like you want to start.
I do. I'm gonna be frankly honest. I have been very discouraged over the last several years about the relationship or maybe the environment between staff and the auditor. And so that's very conflicting for me because I have valued the position. I think there's public transparency in the position. I think that is probably the most important factor here. But then when I've met with staff in the past and it's, well, we don't know the numbers or we haven't seen the audit so it's this continued clash. And so even just to the tone in this meeting at Tom's expense, I felt like was, well, he had a month to do it and he didn't get it done. They didn't get a chance to review it. But if you look at it, if you take a minute to look at it from his perspective, he has to direct the superintendent staff to do work. And I think everybody up here would agree that the people sitting in front of us are so busy. So one thing I think Tom continues to be is respectful to the superintendent staff and not charging into these departments and saying, I need this information because I have a board meeting. Now, I do agree with Mr. Mathias' statement that if we didn't have it, it would have been nice just to call and let's push it down. But we always, how many times have us as a board been sitting in here and heard from staff, yeah, we want to do this, but we're time sensitive. We need you to vote on it today and we'll make changes later. And how many times has that risen to bite us in the butt? I'm just going to put that out there. So it's that's, I think, Vance, I hear your point about having people that are auditors that have that, but I also know that there's an audit committee representative that doesn't value the work that's being finished, and there's one that does. And so we're not even getting consistent information among the auditors that are in the audit committee. It's not even about having relevancy to the profession. It's we all can't agree on what we want. So I do think if we go external, which I think there are some benefits to that, I think that it does. Tom is not an educator, and that's, I think, Dr. Burns, when we were talking earlier about a program review versus a finance review, one of the things we ran in back at the very beginning of my tenure on the board was this rift between he can't evaluate whether the curriculum department and the professional development department are doing their job. That's ultimately the superintendent's work, but that's what we're kind of asking for, and that's out of his realm. So we think an external auditor might have the expertise to come in and do that, but that's still her work. And then we're hiring an external person to come in and meet with her staff. And if we think Tom is already a little bit tumultuous, what is an external person going to come in here and put on the show for all of these people who are hardworking and don't want to be discredited in the work they do? So that's why I have very small opinion of this matter, because I don't know what the right decision is. But I wanted to put that out there because I did feel like Mr. Ma is like I don't know. I feel like you take a whipping sometimes up here, but if you step back from it and look at what he is trying to respect the superintendent and her staff and the work that we do and manage this, because I have been in conversations with staff where they are mad about some things that are coming forward. And if we put an external person out there, what's that going to look like? So I'm just telling you guys, I feel very irritated by the whole thing, but if I go back to, like, we need this because of the public transparency. Mr. Ward can come up and tell us everything that Tom said, but he works here, and he is committed and wants this district to be perpetuated in the best light, and sometimes we need a different voice that's not there, and so that's where I'll start, go.
Okay, I'll jump in right behind you.
Please.
That when Mr. Mock came on board, I have some historical perspectives.
Yeah.
He came at the same time I was elected.
Yep.
And I think that what I enjoyed was his outside perspectives from the business world. But with that has come a tremendous learning curve. And I think that's what is so time-consuming with getting the audits done. And that if we outsource those that are content specialists, the audits, they wouldn't have all the questions. They would come with the knowledge, and they would be asking the questions, rather than trying to learn first, and then, which takes the time from staff. And then they could do a real audit, because I'm inclined, as is my appointee to the audit committee, that we look at outsourcing.
Is yours Kurt?
Kurt Benny.
Can you
And he'll tell you too.
qualify
He's talked to me
mean
about it.
in lieu of the internal audit function or in addition to fill this?
I'm saying that we don't need to add any more positions, that we have the internal auditor position.
For 2 more years.
Excuse me?
For 2 more years.
A few more years.
I'm just speaking, I know Mr. Mock. What I'm asking you is, after
I'm
Mr.
not-
Mock's tenure,
at
are we
this-
talking
at-
about external?
At this juncture, I'm not suggesting that we eliminate the
Okay,
position.
that's, I think, the question.
Yeah,
where
no,
we're going.
but what
No,
I'm.
he said that
but-
before, yeah.
But what I'm also saying, though, excuse me, the addition, though, I don't think that paying somebody $100,000 a year to put together PowerPoints makes a lot of sense, that they should have some kind of administrative support. That's my opinion about that.
Yeah, I don't disagree.
And I don't know that if we have somebody already that could be shared, or,
Probably not.
So I guess it's my turn.
yep.
I believe that Mr. Mock probably could use some clerical assistance. I believe that it probably is not the best use of his time to have him sit in and do something that a clerical person could do. I have to be honest, I am opposed to bringing someone who has skills or who has education and kind of training them so that when you are no longer there, they can just automatically go into your job. Innately, I have an issue with that because I believe as good stewards of taxpayer dollars, we have an obligation to always look for the very best person that's available at the time the vacancy occurs.
Okay.
And if we hire someone with the understanding that you're being groomed to just go into this top-level position when the person who's there, I mean, that may happen, but I think that person should have to fill out an application and interview just like anyone else. And if it turns out that they're the best qualified, which they probably might be, considering they've been working there, but if by chance they're not, I don't think it needs to be a given that they get the job. I hear you, and you and I've talked, just the two of us, and I believe that you work hard. I'm just not convinced that we need to hire another auditor who does the same thing. So I guess I'm semi-outsourced at this point.
Thank you. Dr. Byrd?
I think she makes a lot of good points. I've had 2 audit committee appointees, one of which had experience with auditing and taught auditing at UCF and blah, 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 like was a professor. And she actually did mirror a lot of what Vance has been saying about the just lack of, like, that Tom is very much a one-man band. But given the financial situation of the district, I would recommend pretty much what Mr. Mathias suggested, which would be some clerical work and then hiring a person when the time comes, simply because we just don't have enough. I don't think we have enough finances to do too much more. And I'm not sure that it would buy us, I'm not sure about the return on the investment for a second, if that makes sense. But I do think you need help clerically for sure. And I do agree that he also needs help, like a bigger committee could be worth it, or a bigger audit group, but,
Talking about the department or the committee?
the
Department.
department, a bigger department would
I
be.
heard you say committee
Would
too,
be
but-
I did say committee, I'm sorry, would be logical, but I don't think that we're financially in that position personally.
Mr. Dodd?
Unless you were creating cost savings as a result, you know?
Yes.
I guess, but this all kind of goes back to us as a board. I mean, when he brings forth his audit plan for the year, then we gotta look at that and say, okay, is this mostly just compliance, or is this financial audits?
Yeah.
Are we looking for some cost saving sort of audits? I mean, right, I mean, still, how many years ago was that transportation audit that we still rave about? Like, that's the one thing that we continue to go back to. What was that, like 6 years ago now, at least? And so, I mean, is there more of that stuff hanging out there? I don't know, but we could direct that work, right? I mean, we could direct and say, throw some more cost savings on there versus, you know.
I think that's where I get confused too, though, because I feel like I don't know that the district would agree that there's a bunch of cost savings out there, so there's just a consistent, like,
And I think the other conundrum is we get a hypothetical estimate of what those cost savings are.
right.
And I think only one time have we ever gone back and really looked at, was it really legitimate?
Right. I don't disagree.
You know, and I mean, certainly the other piece of this is that there are so many areas and departments within this organization, and I mean, I guess you don't know what you're expecting is actually occurring on a daily basis. You know, I mean, I guess I kind of go back to my experience at Disney and in auditing. I'd go around and follow somebody through the pre-opening procedures of Space Mountain. Did you check this lap bar? Did you check that fire hydrant? Did you check this emergency escape? I mean, just the level of detail that is checked, you know, every single day. I mean, you look at our organization, I don't know, I mean, you get the folks out doing their checklists on the buses before they go out. I don't know if, you know, if somebody's checked to make sure that every single employee, I mean, obviously.
Yeah,
you know,
that
I
gets
don't
back
know.
to the type of audits,
Right.
like I said, that you guys want done. And, you know, when I did the maintenance and the transportation audits, and I was at those locations and spending time with people learning some of the functions, you know, I didn't necessarily I did not put them in the audit report, but I did speak to management about it, you know, and some of the ways we could additionally save money. And some of those were applied at maintenance. I mean, they weren't in the audit report, but going back and working with Calvin and Mr. Carr, I could see that they implemented those things, if that makes sense. I mean, not everything reaches a level that needs to go in the audit report, but you can speak to management and say, hey, if you could do this, this, and this, you know, save some money.
You know, I mean, I just kind of mentioned transportation, but I mean, in the curriculum world, I mean, how many things are spelled out in state statute that we're supposed to teach? I don't know. I mean, did we teach Too Good for Drugs this year to the first graders at XYZ school? I don't know. You know, you have no idea.
There's no way on this planet that Mr. Mott could do
No,
that.
you can't.
Right.
What I'm just saying though is that this is so vast, and there's so much that we don't even attempt to find out if things have occurred. You know, we have these expectations and we just believe that they have occurred. You know, and you know, I don't know, maybe from my own kids' experience, I go, well, here's one place where it didn't occur. Well, let's not paint with a broad brush. Okay, well, if it didn't occur here,
Right.
it probably didn't occur somewhere else too. You know, and we don't even have any idea, you know, sometimes to what extent that is. Or that being said, you know, I guess you've mentioned 2024 as a date a couple of times in this presentation. So you're looking at 2 year.
June 30th, 2024 is.
So we're looking at 2 years.
Yeah.
You know, for me, I don't know that we need a 2-year transition period. I mean, I think some overlap is helpful. But so I guess for me, I guess I'm not ready to hire another person. That being said, I think we've got to have somebody internally. I mean, anytime we come up with one of these, somebody cries foul about a booster organization misusing funds, we're not going to go out and spend $30,000 hiring an outside company to come check that out. We're going to be like, hey, Tom, go dive into this.
Yeah, and I tried.
We're gonna spend $100,000.
And I tried to make
Just
this.
Have everyone
$3
stand
a
by.
year.
I tried to make this more than just me. I was looking at what does the board want the audit function to look
Right.
like? You know, before I came on board, the audit function looked like they were outsourcing roughly 6 to 7 audits, even 8 audits a year. internally, they did about 3, and there was a director, there was a district auditor, and there was an administration person. That's what it looked like before, and then there was obviously a gap before I came in. And then I didn't follow that model. Obviously, I did a completely different model because what the board asked me to do, to do cost-saving audits. And that was my focus, and I believe, my memory serves right, and it might not have been this discussion in this room with everyone, but my discussion with the board member was, the idea was to bring someone in to help me, in doing audits in roughly 3 years or so when the budget got better.
And the other piece is I'm just sitting here contemplating this, is that there are so much more auditing occurring internally.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, just about every month we've got Roni's reports of having
For
gone out
internal
to audit
funds.
bookkeepers, right? So like that's not something that necessarily has to rise to internal audit director position, right? So I guess, I wonder if there's just kind of a model there to look at across other departments of, are we auditing the work? What does that look like? For instance.
Unfortunately, when you look across school districts, I don't think there's a model out there yet.
Well,
Yeah, I think that's what you're looking
because you're going out and looking at bookkeepers, right, and ensuring, hey, all these checks are all double signed, and this is accounted for in this receipt, so on and so forth. Like there are some processes in place, and we see that come back to the board that, hey, here are all the exceptions, or inventory over $1,000. We see those reports every month. Hey, these are all in good order. So that gives us some sense of, hey, the assets out there are being protected and used accordingly.
But when you do an audit, you can go beyond that. I know what you're saying.
Right.
But for accuracy, I know you're going more on the accuracy, but, an audit can obviously go beyond that depending on what the scope is.
That's right.
And you got to define that and what you want and not obviously at the end of it. I always get that. It seems like even from the audit committee, I come in and say, here's my scope and objective. And then then you go off on a tangent into another area. It's like, well, that wasn't what the audit was. Bring it back to what the audit was. And then, but remember, when I do the plan, I submit a general objective for that audit. That's the time then to say, hey, Tom, I think you ought to do, these other things too. Not at the end. It's better to do it when I'm submitting the plan and saying, that's an interesting objective, but we really think it ought to be expanded. Go more into depth, like you were saying earlier. Go down into what are the people doing? How are they efficiently using their time? That wasn't if it's not the objective of the audit, you're not going to do that unless it's spelled out. If that makes sense. Because another thing is remember, the departments are asking for, well, what's the objective of your audit, Tom? I need to know, they want to know that, am I going to go down and find out what their people are doing day in and day out? It just helps them understand, not that it's some, like some mystery, that Tom's going to be going in and finding out what people are doing, then reporting back.
And I think that
it's spelled out.
situation that he just spelled out is what gets compounded when we have an outside expert come in and audit. Because then you don't feel like, this is my internal auditor that's just making sure we're in compliance or looking for cost savings. Now it's an outside entity that's coming in that is an expert, that then the suggestions might not be aligned with the district's vision or with superintendent's vision. It's an outside perspective, which is, there's benefit.
Which is what you're asking for.
I agree, which is the superintendent's job. I'm just going back to that again. I think for going forward, what I've heard from a majority of you is that we do believe that there's some administrative support that could be provided to Tom at this point. Administrative, clerical, okay.
So is that a full-time job?
I think it is, actually, because I don't think there's anybody else that we can pull off
That's my
of
biggest
stuff,
concern is that.
right? There's not like, everybody in the district is working, all your clerical people work.
I'm not saying you put it on somebody else, but I'm saying, does he need somebody sitting there for 40 hours a week to produce a PowerPoint every couple
Well, the audit
weeks?
committee, did the audit committee not talk about
Not
maybe
the
even an
only thing.
intern, hiring an intern?
No, they spent no more than 2 minutes on this because they said, no, it's the school board.
No, this was before you. I was on the audit committee,
Okay,
so it was
that's
when I was
fine.
the vice chairman. We talked about the possibility of like local interns from universities, and I know Lake Sumter has a 4-year organizational management degree that they offer, that you could even hire somebody that was in organizational management to come in part-time even, 20
Well,
hours a week to work clerical.
I think we need to know what it is you want the person to do.
Could list that out. I could list that
What
out.
would be their duties and responsibilities, and then I think based on that, we could determine whether this is an 8-hour position.
Yeah, that's great.
6
I think I
hour
gave a lot
position.
of that to when I was doing I didn't bring everything that I brought to them,
But
obviously.
if we could see that.
But
I think that
I did list out,
I agree.
kind of the top, I don't know, about 20 items I think I do.
We could
You know,
probably-
month in, month out, kind of quarter in, quarter out. I kind of broke it
Could he
down.
work with Chad and come up with a
Yeah.
job description, and then we
Mhm.
could,
Yeah, we have
y'all
to-
could like
we have to
come
vote
up
on that
with how
anyway.
many. We have to
We had to vote on it anyway.
Yeah, you'd have to
Yeah,
vote on it
and so it
anyways,
could just
right?
be done through the job
Yeah,
description.
that'd You want
It
that
could
put
be-
together?
You guys
I
can
can put that
decide if
together.
it's a half-time job or a full-time
Yeah.
job.
Mhm.
So
So-
put that together and
So I'll
bring
put
it
that
back.
together,
Great.
right? Okay.
Any other comments?
I'd be interested in also looking at what in your mind you envision that job description looking like to replace you, and then seeing that at the same time, now that you've had
What-
plenty of time to.
That kind of would be question back to that second slide is, well, what are you looking for the future director to do?
That was my opening comments.
Well, and
Was
I
the
would be
future.
interested in the person sitting in the seat coming back with what you think that vision should look like. And maybe we go out and look and see what's in the marketplace right now that would fit that vision.
Right,
of-
so
To replace.
doing these, you know.
Mhm.
I mean, sometimes you get like someone that was a CPA and majority of their time was spent doing financial auditing.
But also, one of your strengths, and statute allows it now, was you were a procedural guy at first, like procedural audits.
Yeah, I did quality audits
That's
and
right.
performance
That's right.
audits
And that's where you get,
operational
that's where you
audits.
get those hidden savings.
Yeah.
Is in the procedural side. The financial, to your point, Mr. Dodd, we almost have it covered through all these other multiple audits that we do. And then it's how do we improve our processes? And
Right.
so.
And that, I know you get kind of scared, but what Mark was talking
I'm not
about
scared at all.
well, no, you are, because what Mark was talking about earlier about going in and seeing what a person does, I mean, as soon as that goes over to educational, everyone gets a little nervous that the auditor's going there. Well, it's procedural. I mean, no matter whether it's education or in the operational side of the house, I know you get a little nervous, but in my mind, Mark has done, it's like going out in the theme park, you know? You're an auditor, you don't run those rides every day, but if you go through the procedures and what they're doing, then you can make recommendations on the
But
other end.
I think in my world, that if someone were gonna come in and audit film advice, what
Mhm.
I do for a living, and they had your qualifications,
Right.
that would totally annoy me, that that person's even in my space. Now, if it was someone who was an expert that was above me coming in to see how I work, then it's a different, you know what I'm saying? And I'm not,
I relate to what you're saying because you're talking a top-level person versus the staff working.
no, the fact that you just don't know anything about what I do. If there was a CEO of another equipment company coming in that then could look and critique me, because I've hired it 4 times, I've done it at Matthias.
Yeah.
Brought outside people in. But there was a respect because of where they stood in the industry. That when you go in and you're trying to work with staff on curriculum issues with no education background, I just think that if I were in that position, I'd just be annoyed. Because
But
number
when-
one, I got to educate you.
I think.
But when Disney hires auditors, I mean, they don't
Yeah.
have that experience, but they go out and do those audits.
I have audited rides that I don't know how to operate.
Right.
Because I have
But there's
said-
processes then.
There are processes, and
That's a process audit.
That's where
This
I
is
think he's,
different.
but I
Don't
think when we're
sell
talking
out
about
your
curriculum,
company.
I think we're getting
Find
confused
out.
here. He's talking about a process audit within curriculum. Did the teacher have lesson plans?
Right.
Did
Yeah.
the teacher follow the blueprint? Did the
Right.
teacher use this resource? Did the teacher use the textbook? Did they bring in their own thing? Yeah, I mean, there are all
But-
those.
I
things
attempted to
within
do that
teaching
But
audit
with
standards.
before.
what you just said,
Went down that road.
I would almost guarantee you that he would have to be brought up to speed with what even that looks like. That's my point.
But that's true for any.
Yeah.
That's why I'm
auditor,
saying,
isn't
not,
it?
not if we outsource and they are proficient in that category.
And there's like, I just don't know. Is there education?
That's what I
audit
have trouble with.
specific?
I understand
don't-
what
I've
he's
never
saying,
heard
but
of
I
those
don't know where
people.
you find that person as an auditor type person. I think you can find the education type person that you could hire to go do that audit,
But
but they may not be an auditor, so
education finance
I struggle
people?
with that.
Get a
only.
retired principal to.
Well, but that's not an auditor, that's, you're just getting a peer,
you're teaching them
right, is
auditing.
what you were saying
Well, you're
before,
getting-
getting a peer to
you're looking
review.
for that process. That's what we're looking
And
for.
that's where I
the
think we're,
question.
yeah, and that's what I'm talking about when we were talking about this, is process. And I think that's where he is too, and he's not trying to audit curriculum. Is this a good textbook or not? It's, did you even use the book? Or did it go home at the end of the year with your kid and go straight to the recycling bin?
Do you have a sense about how many of these
Where the algebra books
that we could outsource?
Where the algebra books really are.
Yeah, so
Sorry.
I guess maybe my
Sorry.
comment would be, if you ask me, Scott, go out and audit, I'm a former auditor before I become CFO. Scott, go out and audit ESE. I would say, not a good idea, because I don't have the understanding, and I think we talked about that. Tom does a good job as an auditor, but a lot of what y'all are talking about is outside of the financial audit world. And so you kind of do need that person that has that experience and a background in it. Yeah, you said you audited rides that you didn't know how to operate, but you know how to audit rides.
That's right.
You've audited rides before, so, if you audited education systems, you could have an understanding and say, oh, can I go into an ESE department and understand enough about it to make some logical assumptions about how it's operating? Yeah, I
No,
think you could.
no.
But if you've been
Not
a
ESE.
financial person your entire career, that's a big jump. And I think, what I keep hearing him talk about, and I don't disagree with him, he is overwhelmed, but do you add another person? When you add that other person, what kind of person do you want to add? Do you want to add someone that's another financial background person? I don't think that would be useful. And if we're going to keep a small audit department, which I think the size of the district justifies that, then you're going to need diversity somehow, and I think the way that you get that diversity is you start subbing it out. There are things that I do that are that go through my department that I'm not an expert in, and I hire people to do that for us. We have consultants that do our bonds for us, our investment for us. A lot of those things, I bring in outside people because that's an area that I'm not proficient in and wouldn't be expected to. These people do nothing but that day after day. So I just think, my opinion, and this is just my opinion, I think if you want that diversity and you want that ability to look at other areas, Vance, you'll back me up on this, you use people that weren't necessarily financial auditors, you use people who were expert in the field to come in and offer additional information.
Yes, but not always. And my suggestion is that a good auditor can look at a process and ask what the criteria are for performance, in other words, success. And then, do you have standards? Do you have written procedures? Tom tells me there's a lot of departments here that don't have written
No standard
procedures.
operating procedures.
So it's hard to even audit, because if you don't have any standards. So then a good auditor, a broad-thinking one, can go in and say, okay, well, I talk to the people, you find out there's 6 standards, and my view is it can be applied to almost anything. And that you come up with the standards, you come to agreement with them, and then you go audit. And one of my favorite ways was to find the really good one, manager, and go with them to find the standards, and then you go for the weak ones that don't have those standards, and you can highlight what is missing from the work process. Are they measurable? I mean, I come from a measurable world, and you have to ask at some point in time, if you have a certain number of, say, teachers at a school, how do you allocate those resources? Do you have a process for doing that that's fair, that is more efficient, and do you document it? And then, of course, you reach the question, do you want them to document stuff like that? You can overkill too. And I've been in those situations. We say, no, there's too much, we're gonna have to rely on judgment, professional judgment at some point.
And from my experience, I go in, I look at, the process, I look for ways, look for duplication of efforts, look for ways to streamline, look for ways to combine a job that could reduce the amount of workload on people. So I know sometimes in the school district, you necessarily can't do that. You fall under government guidelines, and things have to be done very silo-y, from one thing to another, and you can't combine things because of that. But there are ways to still streamline, and those were some of, when I went into maintenance, and I went into transportation. Those are the things I talked about. You know, they definitely came back and said, hey, we can't do that. We got to do it this way, Tom. You don't understand that. And I say, okay, fine. You know, but there were other areas where were able to use some of my recommendations and combine things and reduce staff.
So if I may.
Over time.
What I think I hear everybody saying is that we've come to a consensus on how to move forward. I think, do you feel comfortable with that now? With
I'm
the
comfortable
current?
with what the
No,
board.
but do you understand what we?
I work at the pleasure of the board.
Right, but-
I'm happy, you know, I'm
But you
I'm
heard
happy
what
to
we're
get some
looking for.
help, to
We
be
do- okay,
honest.
good. Administrative help. And then I think that I'm hearing, it would be nice, maybe if we could meet with Tom and individually, just have a discussion about what you think, how, just like we talked about with our mental health liaisons, our millage money. What have we learned? How do we want to go forward? What does this position look like in 2 years? Since we know we have a deadline, because we have a little bit of time on that to kind of decide what is that audit position, internal, external, all of those things. But I think we have some time. I think we're actually discussing something 2 years in advance for once, which is amazing. So I appreciate this conversation, but I think that it'd be helpful to do some reflective work with Tom on what that
But I'm also
position
putting
looks
together
like.
my plan for 22, 23,
Okay.
which needs to come before the board by June.
For what audits you want to do?
Next year.
Right, okay, perfect. That's good. And so we could, when
So-
you meet with
so
him,
I
we can
will
talk about that too.
I will be contacting you to meet with you like I
Perfect.
always do to get some thoughts on the
Perfect.
audit work.
So you'll
That'd be
be
great.
able to put down your thoughts on what the position should look like.
The responsibilities of the person that we
No,
would hire.
and you though.
Huh?
And you,
I
like,
want you as well.
right.
Oh, yeah, you wanted my job responsibilities. Oh, absolutely. I mean, that's,
But
a
not
lot
just
of that's
your-
already
Not what
written.
you're
Tom,
doing-
not
what you're doing
yours.
now.
Right.
What you're gonna be, what you envision would be the best of that position.
Okay, for the future.
For
Yes,
the future.
Okay.
yes, perfect. Okay, Vance.
First of all, can we clarify what you're going to consider him getting, administration person?
Right.
And then what? Do
That's-
some external consulting, getting external consulting?
Yeah, I would genuinely like to see what's available for external, what those categories look like. And, because we keep talking about it.
What does
If-
that mean,
What
though?
is it?
What do you mean you want to see?
If there are organizations that are content specialists at curriculum, for example,
Okay.
or ESE or whatever.
So we could contact those people.
Yeah, yeah, so we can get a sense about what
And
that
I
looks
think,
like.
Vance, we can't tell you which ones we're gonna externalize or internalize until we know what the plan is for next year, so I think
Could I
it's.
suggest that if there are areas that you think need an outside specialist, that you let
We
Tom
identify them
know?
first, I like that.
Oh,
idea.
yeah.
Let's do that.
What?
Let us identify those that we don't think he could do.
Right.
And.
Or shouldn't
and-
do, or shouldn't do.
Yeah, it should.
Because it's better
Yeah,
for
that's
the
good.
school district if
Right.
someone else comes in and
Yeah,
does.
yeah,
Either-
they're experts at it.
Either
And
direct-
then pull those out ahead of time so they don't become part of the plan to start with. Is that possible?
Yeah.
Okay. I like that.
Does that make sense?
And then
Like
you
your
need to find some real
algebra.
estate, because it sounds like we're gonna add some.
Here we go. Look.
That was his last slide. So he needs an additional closet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's right.
Take-
Next slide.
attorney's table.
I would wanna send
Okay,
this off to Val.
I'm gonna make this brief. I gave you a handout already, that is kind of my proposal for recruiting, future additions to the audit committee. In the past, when Larry Metz, who now is a judge, and you've seen him, he created and really took the bit by the horns in setting up the audit function and defining it with the charter and everything else. And the one thing, though, that probably we now find, in my opinion, that needs to be done is to define the process for you, the board, getting qualified people to apply to put on the audit committee. And my real briefly, is just that to go out and I can define the process for that, because I can remember when we looked for internal auditors and your HR department didn't know where to go. They didn't know the professional groups or anything else to send these notices out to. And they were just sending them out to, government agencies and networks. And so I think there's a method that I can define further. I've defined some of it here in this proposal. But to set some standards for the qualifications for people to apply, and have an outreach program. I can define that if you want. I used to do recruiting for 20 auditors a year at County Los Angeles. That
For a paid auditor position?
Yeah,
Okay.
that was many years ago.
Paid.
Paid.
This is
As
our
opposed to
committee,
the
right?
committee, yeah. But my view is that you're a big enough organization, you're well-run. I think that you can attract people that are retired or employed that are senior level that would come with the audit experience and everything, be able to clearly let each of you know what to read from the audit committee meetings. Because otherwise, if the purpose is to sort through this stuff and provide you information, if you don't have qualified people on there talking to you, it's my view, then you're gonna kind of be left without solid information. And we're now down at the point where my view is that only qualified auditors should be the chair or the vice chair. And there's only two of us on the committee, and one is so busy with work that he doesn't want to be the vice chair even. So we're left with a situation where you could have, in my term, the maximum I can be the chair is 2 years according to the charter. So that means at the end of this year, someone else is going to have to be available, and I hopefully we have some people that are qualified. There are some people out there that I know of that I could certainly get them to fill out an application. So I've got examples which I can send you of application forms that are used for planning and zoning committees at the cities. Tavares and the county does that for all their committees. They have actual application process and forms and everything else, and I think that we need to define that for this committee.
Okay, that'd be great. If you want to send it over, that'd be great.
Yeah, and so now my question is, what process do you want to look at this, or do you want to put this on the next board meeting to actually discuss and approve? I need some direction on how to go with that.
Wait, what is,
Yeah.
what
You're
are,
gonna change
what are we doing?
anything with that, it's gonna have to be a policy change.
Through the charter.
Right.
Right.
It'd probably be a charter in the IA charter or.
Well, we currently don't have a policy, so would it be a new policy?
To this committee.
No.
They take
So I
the
think,
policy
so.
What is, what is,
I was
the-
gonna
what is,
say.
The charter or the policy for the audit committee is for how the audit committee functions. Not for the hiring, or not for the finding process of an audit committee member. So I'm not sure if it would fit in there.
So one of my questions in here was, would define, where this should be included.
Is there a policy for the committees that the board fills?
General committee?
Yeah, general committees, because this falls in that area, right? When they do their appointments?
It was set up as a specific committee when it was originally passed,
Uh-huh.
because there was no auditor at the time. So it.
No, I'm just talking general.
Change what the policy has been, or the intent of the policy, it's just gonna have to be done as a policy change.
Would be
It's
wherever
not
that,
significant other than it's gonna take additional time.
I think you're misunderstanding the intent here, because I think that the policy is that each school board member appoints a representative to the committee. And I
Right.
don't think this changes that. I think what the proposal is, hey, sometimes the challenge is maybe the school board member doesn't have a wide pool of applicants that they even know are interested, right? So depending on what circles you've traveled in, okay, when I'm going around to appoint an audit committee, I'm like, oh gosh, I don't know very many people who've had that kind of experience, right? Who are available in the middle of the afternoon on a Thursday or a Tuesday or whatever it is. But if I knew that there were members of the public who were interested, and then I have a vacancy in my appointment, I can say, oh, these 6 people are interested. Maybe I could talk to one of them and figure out, maybe one of you is just my appointee, and then I would talk to them and say, okay, I appoint John Smith as my appointee. I knew he was interested, I knew he's qualified, and,
Yeah, I
that's how
think,
the cities and the county
That's
do
right.
it.
That's
And
how
one of the
cities
things-
and counties do this, even when their commissioner is in charge of appointing somebody, they still receive a pool of applications, and then they can go to that pool, or they can just say, hey, Bill, I want you, can you go be my appointee? And then they'll
Right.
do that. But I think it's really just about creating a backup of, here are people who are interested, so that if we have a vacancy, the 5 of us can go to that pool and say, this guy's interested.
Yeah.
I'll talk to them.
one of the things
So
I.
it's not changing anything.
That's right.
Yeah, but
it's
one
merely
of the
giving
things
us a
I want to
resource.
add
That's right.
is
That's right.
the strength of the person that you're appointing to the audit committee. You're helping the internal audit function. And when you don't appoint a strong person, it's kind of like, you know, when I go, I'm not getting anything from that individual, if that makes sense.
Sure.
So I'm getting it from you, but I'm like, well, why am I not getting it from your audit committee member? So in turn, I really get, I don't know, am I allowed to use frustrated? I get frustrated a lot. Because I got 5 people here, I got 5 people on the audit committee, I'm not getting input, I'm not getting, and then I keep getting pushbacks, and I keep getting, why aren't you doing this, and why aren't you doing that, and why are you doing clerical? And I'm like, well, help. If that makes sense.
It does.
If you can see where my frustration
And
lies.
at least in my view, I don't think it even locks the school board member into saying, I have to pick somebody from that pool. I know somebody who I think is perfectly qualified to do this job and they're interested, I'll
Yeah.
go appoint them.
Yeah.
But if I don't have that person in mind, how do I find that person? You know, do I just put it
Yes,
out
and
on
that's-
Craigslist and say?
And that,
"I'm
no,
looking for an
and
audit
that's
committee
where I
member"?
think, I think that's where this helps,
Right.
would help out a
That's
tremendous
right.
amount.
And did you run this by your audit committee? Your
You didn't-
recommendations?
No, you didn't pass that, you discussed it.
We discussed it.
You discussed it.
And how was it received? Because some of it, you're really limiting the pool by your standards.
Mhm.
I agree. These standards
Yeah.
are, do you
Well,
fit all
it's an
these
audit
standards?
committee and it's a technical advisory committee. And of course, that would be up to you, like he's saying, is we're just trying to get you some qualified candidates, and then if you find that, I'm not saying that, well, yeah, I did say in there that they should have some of those backgrounds. You know, but I did break out some others, you know, if there's some other, you want a wild card in there, but I think at least 3 of them ought to be qualified.
So where I looked, I think, at the greatest merit of this is just the concept of the process of creating the pool. I think,
I love it.
we can kind of create our own guidance based on this and say, oh gosh, I don't know if we're going to be able to get 5 people who meet this set of criteria in Lake County. Let's kind of shape this more towards some recommendations, you know, and naturally then if I'm a citizen going to apply and I say, oh, they're looking for people ideally with this, I'm not there, you know, then I guess we don't want to shut some people out because they haven't received, you know, at a place with 300 employees with a budget of $100 million, right?
Well,
Right, like,
this is
that's
a
very
$700 million
specific.
organization, you gotta have some concept of the larger issues. You know, I mean, that's you guys have the responsibility to select somebody if you can, though, we'll never get a consensus, what I consider to be an informed consensus, because they don't have the background and they don't have the scale of experience.
Are
We
you
just-
certain of people's backgrounds? Because, are you certain of people's backgrounds? I mean, do you actually know their backgrounds? I know the people that I appointed have advanced degrees in finance.
I know, I looked
So,
at,
like-
I tried to look everywhere because, you know, we don't have application forms. We don't have any mechanism to let even the audit committee chair or anybody else know
I'm
what
not
the
certain
background
that the
is.
people that we have appointed aren't qualified.
I couldn't confirm that 2 people even had a college degree. Okay, that's my
I don't
only
think-
going on out online and trying to find that. And I also found one person that had a major article written about him that was related to fiscal issues.
So I don't think today we're trying to establish criteria in order to be even appointed to the audit committee. I think we're just trying to create a process of, here's a pool of people who have some background. To what extent, I don't know, I mean, but have some sort of background, maybe not to this level, but some experience. And that then when there's a vacancy, we can perhaps go to that pool of people if we don't already have somebody in mind. That ultimately it still remains each individual board member's
Yeah.
purview
does, yeah.
to appoint.
I'm
their
providing you
appointee.
additional resources because of the frustration I have with being a committee where
But
people
having,
can't even ask questions. They don't know what to ask.
I happen to agree that having a standard that you're looking for, I think that maybe we just need to spend some time
Yeah.
reviewing, and maybe this
Looking at
is,
it.
I think it's a little over the top, personally, some of them. For
Well,
what we're
it's-
trying
it's
to
blue
do.
sky.
You want to negotiate down is what you said.
I'm there, let's negotiate down, but I think this is, I mean, because this is really kind
Well,
of.
that's
a blue
why
sky
it said a high standard, and okay, but
I would like to consider the, and I'm trying to speak at a high level. So when you get a recommendation from a pool of applicants and you choose someone who has the experience that was listed on this page, but then it doesn't turn out okay, you have the responsibility then to also fire them in a sense, and that's difficult. I'm gonna tell you from personal experience, and so, that's I'm just putting that out there.
Well-
So when you don't have a relationship with the person that you're selecting, when it's from a pool of applicants, then you run into those types of situations.
That's true.
And
My
that's
appointee has
exactly
served from the time that I was elected.
Yes, I know, you're
And-
lucky, because,
And he
he's-
desperately would like to be fired.
yes, but to your point,
Can
to
we
find
point out
people
this is a
in here.
voluntary
It is voluntary.
position?
voluntary.
It's voluntary,
requirement
and then
to be
you go from position, and then that person
He's your
gets
biggest
taken.
advocate for not
He's the only
running
other
again,
one
right?
listening
He's the only other one.
He's aggravated I am.
He's the only other one with audit
It
expertise.
sucks
That's
to
my
have to do
point.
what I just described,
No, I 100%, and that's where I think that the beauty of this process
is that you can keep your
It doesn't
own.
lock you into having to pick somebody from that pool.
Yeah.
That you as a board member could say, I already have a relationship with you, and I
Right.
believe that you are qualified.
Right.
Here you are.
Right.
But like in the event of a vacancy, and you're like, okay.
I had a vacancy for a while, so I appreciate, me and Tom talked to a couple people, to try to get them to come in, so I appreciate that, the option, it's just that qualification that I'm just putting out there.
Sure.
Because I think we experience frustration because it's a volunteer committee and the meetings would go on for 2 hours for, talk about historical perspective. I would sit
They
there
still
like,
go
who
on 2
can do
hours.
this? Who can sit in the middle of a day that has a regular job that, I mean, if you're running a company that's $300 million, you don't have time to sit in a school board audit committee. And we just discussed how that person doesn't have expertise in school. And so the whole thing is a little bit convoluted.
Yeah,
So-
add an educator to that, since they all want educators.
So Purvis Gray said that they needed, what, 15, 20 minutes? We gave them 90.
And
No,
Vance.
I gave him 80 on the agenda. He
you
sent me an
said-
email and said, I only need 15, and I said, well, past
Here's 80.
experience said
You need more.
a lot
But
more
to
time.
Vance just said, get an educator. The first audit committee meeting I sat in, I left and called Tom and said, I felt like I should have been sitting in the corner picking my nose. Because I had no idea what they were talking about as a professional educator with advanced degrees. So I don't know that that's the logic either. I'm just putting that out there. It just depends on what the audit is, which was the whole point of the conversation of the audit
That's right.
office.
Yeah, that's true.
I have no problem with an application or standards being set. Actually, I think standards need to be set, because when I came on the board, there were no standards, and I actually left my predecessor's appointee in place, because I didn't feel like I had the time to get someone. I also think that there's a component here that's not included. I think there needs to be something said about making sure there is no conflict of interest between the appointee and them having the actual position.
Good point.
And I think if that is spelled out, then it makes it a lot easier for a board member to select someone. I am a little concerned about, I would not want to be locked in that I have to choose one of the people in the pool. And here's the reason. We mentioned the county commissioners. And they do appoint their committee members, but they don't always hold the people that they appoint. For example, on many committees, there's a position held for a school board person. Well, you may not know anything about
Yeah.
that committee. I'm telling you,
don't
I've
show
had a steep learning curve. The county attorney and I have come to know each other quite well with planning and zoning because that's not my area. But if the person is interested and they take their responsibilities seriously, I think they can put in the time and they can do the research and they can at least reach a point where they can intelligently have an opinion and vote. So while I think standards are absolutely needed, I think it's a good idea to have a pool of people because that would have been wonderful for me when I first was elected. But I would ask that they be kind of loosely and that the board member is not tied to having to pick someone from that pool. For example, now, if I were to have to do it over, I have a great person who actually meets a lot of this criteria, but at the time, I didn't know that. So
Right.
that's where I am with that.
So I
If
think-
we're looking at changing the committee, one of the things I did want to propose was, right now it's a sunshine committee, and, I mean, we could do it, right now it's a sunshine committee, and therefore everyone has to be in person, and that is one of the problems, right? If it could be virtual, it's not. But if it's a superintendent, this is something they do in Orange County, if it's a superintendent committee, we could set it up exactly the same, but it becomes it doesn't have to be sunshine, and so therefore it could be virtual. You could still have it be public, you could still do all the things, it just wouldn't technically be under
But I think
sunshine.
once we've appointed the person,
No, they can't meet virtually, and I think that's one of their big problems, because as far as I can
But
tell,
as
like
long
the
as-
business world very much has moved, where a lot
No, but I
of them
think
are
he's saying
online.
that if it's our committee,
our
then it
appointee.
has to be in the sunshine versus a
If we're
superintendent's
It does.
committee.
It does. Mark's right.
Does it have to be if,
Not if it's the superintendent.
what if it's a superintendent's committee
we're
that
appointing
has?
What Dr. Burns is saying is right,
Right.
but it would be
we
changed, now
appoint.
that's a major change.
It's a structural change, but we could write it so that we still appoint.
But I'm curious why they can't do virtual.
Because of that, the quorum law.
It would
There's
be
a
the
quorum
same,
law.
same
Same
rules
thing
as
for
us.
Reason we
us.
can't.
Yeah,
So
it's the
if
same
somebody's
rules
got
as
a-
you guys, yeah.
And I think that really does affect
Why can't they?
people
disagree.
coming in.
Virtual meetings.
Like, it's hard to physically get here, especially if we're
Because
out
they
of
can't-
Claremont,
they can't do
Sure.
virtual.
Oh, yes. I'll second that one.
you know?
But I think that becomes a little convoluted because the internal auditor reports directly to the board.
That's right.
So if you
So we-
have their committee be the superintendent's committee, you're changing the rules of the game. I don't think that
It
that's.
depends on how you would write it. It's, you
Well,
don't
I-
have to,
I-
I was just trying to solve the
No,
problem.
no, no, I just think that's one of those that could become convoluted. If his direct line is to us, and then he has an advisory committee, and their direct line is to the superintendent, that's kind of odd.
The Education Foundation Sunshine, isn't it?
More power.
Yeah, and they meet virtually. So why can't the audit committee meet?
We could have a rule, I mean, we already have a rule dealing with, the ability of people who have heard, have still illness in the family. that
Right,
kind of
right,
stuff,
right.
To use that. I believe our policy extends that to committees. I don't know if you could make that as
I thought the problem was getting past the 3 quorum.
you have to have you have to have a quorum present.
No, if you had a quorum, those are people
Barely
that
get
are
a
regularly gonna
quorum,
be there,
But
that have.
If you open up the
that's
virtual,
always-
all
I mean,
virtual.
It's always been, there's dispute about that line, about being, if you have the quorum, you can have the meeting, but having that person who is not present at the meeting be able to vote and participate in the vote has always been an issue, and it's still an issue, and that hasn't gone away. So I wouldn't want to extend what we're doing with that any further than we already.
But there's an organization that's doing it outside of
I
us,
think you may have
that
just,
is
like-
Sunshine.
That might not be good. I mean, you may have just outed them.
County government does not allow you to vote unless you're sitting in the chamber.
Yeah, that's how, that's,
But this is a committee, this isn't
Right.
a
Well,
government
even the-
entity.
Well,
because they're in the sunshine.
I've had to go
the
to
committees,
physically.
Yeah, I mean, they could still, at sunshine
It,
meeting.
Yeah.
there's no question it would make attendance to these meetings a lot easier.
Well, I'm just saying, that's what they do. They put them, they call them superintendent's committees in Orange County. That's somebody
We're
told
just
me.
calling it something different, but we have to maintain the power to appoint our.
And you can, if
person.
you write it, you would just have to write it.
No, I
I
don't, no.
agree that calling it the superintendent's meeting doesn't change things.
The-
It's still
the-
a sunshine meeting, you're still appointing the individual members of the committee.
What sunshines it is that we're appointing someone. That's where it changes. When the board member appoints somebody, that's when it becomes a sunshine committee. I do think that
That's
this,
not the definition of a sunshine committee now.
No, but that's some of the criteria that makes us the sunshine,
Right.
right.
and we want to maintain appointing a person. So,
Well, like the curriculum review committee is completely appointed. I guess she's just.
Right. She is appointed.
But
you're
if
not
we
able
wanted to,
appoint
we
the
could
person,
appoint to
you
that
don't have
committee.
Discussions that you would normally be, that you are able to have with the committee as currently formed.
I just think it's worthwhile to explore how we can get them to Zoom. And I think that would dramatically improve.
I do.
mean,
I don't
the
think it would
most
really
important
help.
thing is to be able to do it online or through Zoom, then you have to take a look at how the committee's formed to see what your options are for doing that, if that's an overwhelming priority.
We would need IT support for that because he's tried with Zoom and we couldn't even see.
You can't hear.
Right.
Yeah, he
well,
couldn't
that's because
hear.
you just had a computer sitting there on a stool, but like, if you would use these capabilities that we've got in this room.
Can we not get way in the mud? I mean, we can figure out,
Yeah.
we got experts in technology.
That's
We can
right.
get you,
I'm
we
sure
can
they
get you
can figure that
online. If you're trying to do it from your iPhone, probably a problem.
Yeah.
So could we look,
Thank you.
into the possibility of having a sunshine committee that could meet via Zoom? Could we just explore that option a little
Yeah.
bit? Okay. Is that good?
Yeah.
With a little bit of
That's all I'm
criteria, a
asking.
pool, but we're not stuck to a pool, we can appoint who we want.
Optimistic you're gonna get what you want.
I like the idea.
That's all right.
No, we won't.
Take a peek.
So, how are we gonna figure it out?
So, the other wondering I have about this one, and it's kind of a unique set of circumstances based on your pending resignation. But right now, we have 4 members of the audit committee, right? And so yours is effective.
quit.
Right, she quit.
She was like, can I
So
quit? I
so
quit.
we've gotta have 3 out of 4.
She didn't want to
We
read
gotta have 3
CAFR.
people show
wow.
up to this thing. And then, but then, your resignation's effective May 1st, is that right? So, and then that seat gets filled in the general election in November? So from May to November, that seat is just vacant on the audit committee. There's no process for us to have a 5th person. Is that accurate?
But that shouldn't be a problem.
Well, we're barely getting quorum now.
Well, she needs to appoint somebody before she goes.
Yeah, but then that person, does that person continue to serve when she's no longer in the office?
I can't find
That
another person. I've already found 2.
resigned.
I know,
I
but
need-
if she appoints somebody now,
Oh,
Does her appointee
and then she
stay?
resigns May 1st, does that person, they lose their spot too, right? So from May to November, there'd be nobody physically able to occupy that position because there's no school board member to appoint it.
Yes, that is a
And
thing.
so until November, we've got 4 members of an audit committee, and you gotta get 3 of them there. That's, I'm just throwing that out there as the challenge, because there is no process for, if the school board member seat is vacant, for the majority of the board to fill that seat.
Yep.
Sounds like a process, right? A policy
Yeah.
change?
yeah.
Okay.
Because somebody, we shouldn't get to a point 2, but collectively we could
We
nominate
can
somebody,
do,
right?
no, that's true, I mean, we can revise the policy before.
That's what I'm
November.
advocating
that's what
for.
he said.
Okay, cool.
That's
Because
good.
it takes 28 days to do that
Good,
thing
but
twice,
we
right?
need to have something on the next agenda.
Okay.
Right.
Okay, that and they can meet by Zoom.
Yes.
Those two
Those 2 things.
And the audit committee wants to meet every time I'm ready with an audit report, so it's been every 2 months, so, which is more than what the charter is written for, which is 4 to 5 times a year. So we're meeting roughly 6 times a year. So
Is
it's
that-
just one
It
more.
shortens the meetings, they prefer
Oh,
shorter
I don't think
meetings.
it shortens the meetings.
Well, the discussion, well, it's like this. I mean, the discussion always ends up, I mean, it goes beyond the scope of the audit. It's like, you know,
They need to
talk
Exactly what
about.
we just demonstrated this morning for 2.5 hours.
That's right.
Yeah. The discussion just tends to.
He's
to
laughing because
go
he's
on.
an appointee.
But we arrived at some conclusions.
I mean,
We
Mark,
did.
Mark just
We
brought
did.
it up with the CAFR. I mean, I think we went over it. You know, he says 15 minutes. I mean, like 80 minutes. I actually went over 80 minutes. I mean,
Vance has been pretty good, Vance kept it at 2 hours.
he keeps,
That's
yeah,
right.
he keeps
Well
the
done.
meeting at 2
Okay,
hours.
well, we went over today then, because we went beyond 2 hours, so if we're good, can we take a 5-minute recess, just because I need to use the restroom?
Sounds good to
Okay,
me.
thank you guys, very
Thank
much.
you.
What is the
What?
final,
What is
this
what?
going to be?
We will look at it and get back to you, yes, we all like the idea of,
Okay.
okay, 5 minutes. Dr. West, let's see this. Title I programs, right? I don't
Yeah.
have my agenda in front of me. You're on.
Yeah, she's going to talk about
Yes.
Mrs. West.
I'm going to talk.
exciting topic this morning of expanding our pre-K programs, which is
Yes.
an
Perfect.
ongoing goal and commitment.
Thank you. Good morning.
Good morning. Good morning, Superintendent Carnegie, Chairperson Stephanie Luke, and board members. And I don't know why people don't say good morning to the attorney, so good morning, Mr. Johnson.
That's very kind.
I've sat through many, and I've always wondered that. I could also tell you that the seats back there are more relaxing. It feels a little different up here, and I don't get the chance very often. So I am actually honored and very humbled to be up here before you this morning. My purpose is to address one of the superintendent's key priorities, and you'll probably recognize this, or next slide if somebody wants to help me in the back, and click one more time. And that's it. The superintendent, when she came to us, she had her priorities, key priorities and visions for the district. And some of those take time. And one of them has been the expansion of pre-K and early learning opportunities. So next slide, please. I'm sure that we can all agree that offering pre-K programs are in the best interests of our students, for them to be able to attend and have access to them. Having a pre-K on your site is one of the most effective dropout prevention programs there are. Next slide, please. So instead of this being the State of Union address, I'd rather call it the State of Lake County Schools pre-K address. VPK and pre-Ks are funded differently. So if you look across the top, the column of the row shows you the different type of funding sources. And our VPK and pre-K, which we use interchangeably, to have different funding sources. And it varies based upon the needs of the school and the needs of their community. So we want to provide more access to help meet our goals for every school. In 2021, which was last year, we had 23 units in Gen Ed. Now, I did provide for you what ESE has. I'm not here to talk to you about ESE, but I thought you would appreciate the whole picture. So if you go to the next one. Okay. Now, this current year, we went from having 23 units to 31. The highlighted schools indicate new units that were added. They were added through ESSER 2, and they were put in the Leesburg area so that we could afford the students there the opportunity to go to school in VPK all day, all year. Okay. Now, what we are proposing for next year is
Can I ask a clarification question?
Sure.
Title I is all day, all year?
Yes.
Okay. I just
Yep.
want to make sure.
Yep.
Thank you.
Title I is all day, all year, and also the Title IV, we have one Title IV, all day, all year, ESSER, all day, all year.
Okay.
So the semesters are all day, half a year.
Got it. Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay. So for next year, we're proposing the option of adding a fee-based programs. We're actually asking for 6 at our non-Title I schools. The fee-based model means that the VPK student would also attend all day, all year. With this proposal, the reality would be that every elementary school would have their own VPK class on their campus. So let's talk money. Okay, right? So, in the top of your next slide, it shows you what the startup cost of one classroom is. So I wanted you to see so that you could be aware when we start multiplying, adding classrooms, how much money we're talking about. When ESSER 3 was written, we did write in for a total of 5 startup classrooms. So that's what you see in the green, okay? Now remember, the funding varies, but startup does not, there isn't, Title I can't pay for startup. VPK usually doesn't pay for startup, and by startup, it's everything I have included under the colored boxes. You probably can tell I was primary because I go by color coding. For the additional requests that we're asking, the 5 are already in ESSER 3. Since then, we've had requests for 3 more to come to us. And so today, one of the purposes is to ask for another 86,000 plus just to provide startup for 3 more VPK classrooms.
Excuse me.
Sure.
And the classrooms are available? We have open classrooms?
We do, yes. That's a very good question, and I reached out, or was reached out to, by the principals of the schools that are listed here, and they said they have room, yes.
And if they have a classroom, is that room vacant now? Or would it
It's-
not already have furniture?
It's either vacant, well, it doesn't have VPK class furniture.
Oh.
So it takes a special type of
Size.
size, and-
These are
yeah,
elementary schools already.
Yeah.
So how
yeah.
do we know that they're not already sized?
Well,
They're not?
VPK is even smaller.
Oh, it's even smaller?
Even smaller than kindergarten.
Yeah, they're tiny, tiny. Yeah. We don't come before the board every time we add a pre-K class, but we wanted to have this workshop conversation with you because we want to add a different type of option regarding VPK. So if you look at the next slide, the reality is that the fee-based VPK programs already exist at some of our charter schools. They have VPK vouchers that pay half of the day, and then they charge the parents for the other half of the day. And these go on all day, all year. So the fees that we looked at, Mineola, they charge $75 a week, $300 a month. Round Lake Charter, rather, has an $85 registration fee, an $85 weekly fee, or a $340 monthly fee. We would like to propose, if it pleases the board, to go with the Mineola Charter so that, because 5 out of the 6 fee-based classes that we are proposing would be in the south area, so it would be the same, they would be competitive, and the other one is in Sorrento. And I know that that principal would very much like to come in under Round Lake so that it would be competitive and attractive to the parents to have that option.
Do these prices self-sustain the program operationally?
Yes,
Okay.
absolutely.
So we're just startup costs?
The startup cost is all I'm asking for. Yep. And plus one other thing, which has been in ESSER, and I'm getting there, I promise. So for the next slide, parents would sign an explicit financial agreement so that they were aware if they go with the fee-based. Late payments would be a 1-month grace period. All fees are to be paid by the beginning of the next month. For non-payment, the student would be unenrolled. And the Federal Programs Department, that's my department, will notify school administrators and parents if that situation were to occur. Parents of the next student on the waiting list would then be notified so that the slot could be filled. And we are anticipating wait lists from what we've surveyed and canvassed with the principals at the sites. Any questions on that? Good. Okay. So we spoke with the finance department and were provided with the following guidance for the next slide. And that would be to give the parents 2 options, My School Bucks or money order. Absolutely no personal checks or cash would be accepted, and the parents would be able to log in and either pay weekly or do multiple payments.
Do we not take checks?
Finance suggested not. I don't know if Mr. Ward wants
There are
to.
very few things you can, very few schools or anything that'll take a check.
I think that's an excellent idea. Getting principal of
That's right.
days
That's right.
because You don't want to take checks. You'd be surprised at the bills.
Yeah, we would highly recommend that you not take checks, just because it takes so much time chasing them down.
I was going to ask that, and I'm glad, Mrs. Cunningham, you just said that, because we had a fee-based program and we got rid of it because of lack of payment. So I was gonna ask that, like, what are we putting in place that would prevent us to be in the same? I think it was right around the time that my daughter was gonna be ready for VPK, and then it was like, oh, I'm not going for a half year. That's a terrible option, but I understood
Right.
financially why we would do that, so we have some safeguards in place then, and this would be one
Yes.
of them, is that?
Absolutely.
Okay.
That's one of them, and then
Okay.
we'll
Okay,
get
the
to
other
another
Okay.
one.
Okay, perfect. Mr.
Okay.
Mathias, did you have a question too?
Yeah,
Oh,
I'm
I'm
good.
sorry.
Let me go ahead and listen to the rest of it.
Okay,
and then I'll-
so I have a feeling that the next thing that you're going to ask is, who's going to be responsible for this? And I told you, I've sat through a lot of these, just up here. And that would be, in ESSER 3, we already have a position that is included for a fiscal assistant, to be the one to be responsible for monitoring these fees, making sure that they're monitored and tracked in the My School Bucks, as well as collaborating with the school bookkeepers if they choose to go the money order route, and work closely with the parents to ensure that all payments are received in a timely manner. And the next question you might ask me is, okay, after ESSER 3 goes away, who's going to pay for that person? And Title I would pick that up. So we could be able to sustain what we are putting in place.
So if we understand how important VPK is to third grade, right? Why, and we have these other programs that are totally being paid for, why are we pulling this model out to pay at, is it 3 schools?
6, because we don't have funds elsewhere. They're not Title I. The only thing we can do is semester. We do have semester classes, but I think we would all agree that a whole year, whole day is going to educationally prepare the students much more than a half a year is what we can offer them now.
And the entire cost is how much for this per school?
Well, the cost for what we're asking for the setup is, back on your sheet, it's 86,000 plus for the startup.
That sets up for 3 classrooms.
And that's just
That's-
3.
Wait,
Because we already
3
have
more.
5 through ESSER 3 that they've
That's
already-
fully paid for though.
N-
Or are all these going to be paid?
Okay, it's confusing because they all have different setups and they all have different a lot of them have different funding sources. When we wrote for ESSER, we put in for 5 schools. Then we're at 3 more came up after that said we really, really need a VPK unit. So we're asking for startups for 8. 5 were already included in the proposal. The 86,000 are the 3 additional schools that have come forward and said, we really need a VPK as well. Not everyone that I'm asking for a setup is a fee-based.
Not everyone is.
That's correct.
Which ones are not fee-based?
Which ones are not fee-based?
That chart.
I'm really confused with the
Sure.
Chart.
I can tell you. Okay. Cypress Ridge would be fee-based, Lost Lake, Sawgrass Bay, and we also have,
The 6 that you have here.
Yeah.
And then we have 12 that are not fee-based. Is that right?
there's more than that, because,
Those 12 semesters, like,
Right.
the state pays for that one semester.
right,
But
by
the awkwardness
voucher.
of that is that if you go the first semester, you're like, okay, now I'm gonna take a 6-month break before I actually start kindergarten.
Right.
So that doesn't make any sense. Or the other piece of that is, okay, if I'm gonna start mid-year, I probably already got a solution from the first half of the year.
Yeah.
You know, and
As a
so-
parent, it makes no sense.
Yeah, it makes 0 sense from the parent side.
does.
I wouldn't even consider it in half a second.
No.
For any of
I
the
didn't either.
5
No,
kids.
not at all. Like, you just don't want to put your kid in something for 3 months. It's just
Right.
not,
Right.
it's, by the time they're adjusted, they're done.
Yep.
Yeah.
And there wasn't an option, so I know that. For me personally, I went to a VPK program because VPK is free, and then there was an option to extend your day, but it was fee-based.
That's right.
That's what we're
Because
doing.
the state voucher only goes so far, and then you pay
Right.
for whatever extra.
So that's what parents are doing, which is what we're trying to, maybe what I see proposed here for, as an option for our kids, that they can stay at our schools and then
Yes.
fee-based in the afternoon.
But the semester programs are full. I mean, so
Sure.
it may not be an
People
option for
do
you,
it.
but if you look at them.
Sure.
They do.
When you look at them, there are people who, if you say how many kids that's serving, there are children in them. I just want to,
Sure.
like, they're not They're not classrooms that are not,
They-
don't have kids in them.
Right, they may be full, but it doesn't seem to make a logical sense though, that I'm not gonna take a break from December until August from
I would never do
VPK.
it. If I had an option, I would not do it.
It's a
That's
financial,
ex-
it's a
And-
financial decision.
And I do want, it is a financial decision, and I do wonder as well as what will happen to the enrollment in the semester if we have the opportunity at some
And that's something
campuses.
we're going to have to see. But we do know that there has been quite a bit of request from parents. This is what they want.
Yeah.
They want the opportunity
Yeah.
to be able to have a full day.
Oh, yeah, I'm not arguing. I
Yeah.
love all this.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
just want
Yeah,
you to
yeah,
know
yeah.
it's like it's-
But if they can't afford it, they can go to, the semester would be free.
Right.
Right.
And we do, and they are full, yes.
Largely because they are.
You can go for one semester for free, or you can buy into the all day, every day.
That's right.
Those are your two choices.
Unless, well, there's more, if you
There's
want,
more.
if you want to go deeper. Title IV, which we have one of, and then Title I, which we have 12 currently, we would propose a 13th next year. That is governed by federal law, and they have to meet two qualifications. They have to meet financial need and academic need. So we have to screen them. And then if they score at a certain percent, then they are in the Title I programs for free. That's why we are talking about fee-based at non-Title I schools.
But if you're at a non-Title I school, is there a way, if you couldn't afford it, or you'd have to go to the Title I school?
You would go to the semester.
No, but I want them to go year-round because I want to get rid of them. No, because I recognized,
Yeah.
But it's not paid for by the state.
No,
The state
only
just-
half of
The state
it.
only gives you money for half the year. However you break it up, you only get, you can have half a day for for a whole year, or you can have half a year and not the other half of the year.
Or
But
you
you
could have
only,
Monday, Wednesday, Friday all year, or a Tuesday, Thursday. A
That's
lot of-
another
A lot of
option.
preschools down in Claremont do that option.
but is there a way that if a parent couldn't afford the $75, that they would be able to go? And yet, I've seen a no, and yet we acknowledge how important it is for, and maybe even more important for that child.
We'd make up that cost in the general fund.
They meet the criteria, right?
Because we would hire that teacher for the whole year, and if this person only gives us $300 a month, then it would obviously fall short in the.
I understand your question.
Uh-huh. He's asking about a waiver.
You're at, yeah, you're
He's talking about
asking-
something different.
Uh-huh. We haven't,
It doesn't.
we don't have that
We
because
wouldn't-
of the
That's just
extra,
Because
Unfunded.
parents have to do that anyway. I don't know that you have to remember that
it's voluntary.
if we weren't doing it at the school, they're gonna have to go to a daycare. They're gonna have to go somewhere and pay. And we do have a fee-based, we have a reduced fee program, like with Title I schools. Title
Well,
I
no,
is
it's free.
Yeah, it's free.
Well,
So
and
Title I's free.
even this program is very
This
affordable.
is fun, isn't it?
Yeah.
It is affordable.
This is so much more affordable, like that, because you're only paying half of the year's worth of money.
But
Right.
we did stop
Versus-
doing this because we were losing money.
Yes.
So,
That was the conversation I remembered.
Yes.
Yes.
Is when we really toned it back
Yes.
because it was really a drain.
yes.
It
It wasn't
was,
a drain on the individual school, right? It was
Why
somehow
was
of
it a
it.
Just
drain?
didn't get paid.
I asked that, Christy, because I wasn't over it at the time, and it was because from what I understand, there was a lack of willingness to unenroll the students, even if they didn't pay.
Right. Because then you have to call and you can't bring your kid here anymore. And
Yeah.
everybody in education doesn't want to do that, to your point right now.
Well,
Bring your kid, it's good,
It's a little
but
more complicated than just not
Yeah.
wanting to unenroll them because their parents wouldn't stop sending them.
drop them off, right, that's exactly right.
Yes.
And the
They
kid
would
would
keep
be in
coming.
the classroom and you have another little kid that needs that seat. And some of these parents were months and months behind
Yes.
and it was a scheduled fee amount, so it wasn't even $75 a week.
Mhm.
Some people paid much, much less than that.
Yeah.
Which was gonna be my question. I know that you probably have a great plan, and I have no doubt, and I think this is a great idea. My question just is, what happens when you got little Johnny, whose mama dropped him off in the car line like she always does, but she hasn't paid in several weeks?
He's unenrolled.
How do we, what do
Where
we
does
do?
he go, though?
Yeah.
Well, you have to watch him.
Yep.
She left him there. So what?
The nurse.
I mean, how do we?
We'll have to unenroll, and that person, the nurse, Well,
There's a visit.
$17.90.
Visit,
what it costs.
$17. That's
only
$17
$17.
daycare.
Send them to the nurse's station.
we would have to communicate with the family and
And who's gonna
continue.
do that? You're-
That's my department and the new person that we're gonna,
Very good.
that would hire as a fiscal assistant.
Very good.
So
I
do we
think
feel
that
like
will
we
help.
could manage this? I mean, because the one thing I'm concerned about is, and like, don't confuse that. I do agree with the concept of VPK, and I certainly understand that it's a need here. But I do worry about it being a drain on general.
I feel that we can, I mean, let's try, for sure, and see how it works. It's been many, many years, and I believe it was more left on the school than it was on the department. This would come through the Federal Programs Department, and we will have a new person, and that this will be the primary job that she or he does, which is keep on top of the payments and letting them know ahead of time, so it's not a shock that you're in the rears, this is, you need to pay and we need to collect, or there's a waiting list and their spot will be, so it'll is it gonna be perfect? No. Will there be a little mess? Probably at first. It's like anything you start, we're gonna iron out the kinks, but I think the fact that it'll be managed through a department rather than the schools having the burden of having to tell maybe an employee that perhaps that's a hardship. So we would be taking that burden off the school and doing it strictly business. This is a business account, the account is short.
There are private providers right now that do
Yes,
VPK.
sir, there are.
Are there funds that they get that we don't get?
The only funding, and I can phone a friend, because I have one, but it's the same, the VPK voucher. So whether they use their voucher with us or they use it at the private school, it's the same. And then typically, most of your private providers, if they do provide full day, charge more than what we are offering.
You mentioned the Title IV kids,
Yes.
and there has to be testing. Who is going to do the testing?
The testing is typically done by the teacher and TA, I believe.
So within the program?
But
Go
there's
ahead,
always
Jackie.
one of those, right?
This is Jackie Atkinson. She's been the face and the voice of VPK for over a decade, and she is a resource teacher.
Good morning, afternoon. Typically, it's the teacher. Sometimes it's the literacy coach. It all depends. Sometimes they will hire a substitute, which we pay for, and the teacher will come and she will schedule the screeners and do it that way.
Thank you.
Is it okay to use Title I dollars to hire a position to collect fees from all these non-Title I students?
What we're going to do is 50/50. That was a very good question, Mr. Dodd. Yes, we have one now that is 100% Title I, and her name is Molly Mancuso, who is also amazing. And so what we're going to do is, after ESSER runs out, we're going to do 50/50 for each of their spots, so that they're both going to be able to work with the Title I as well as the non-Title I.
So 50% of the funding would come from general fund?
VPK,
VPK?
yeah.
50% of the funding would come from the
VPK
the
general
$300
fund.
that people are paying each month?
Yes.
And then the rest of the funding comes from Title I?
For the Title I ones, yes.
But they're not collecting any fees from Title I kids?
No, everything is attendance. Everything is attendance and record keeping and.
Right.
So there's more than enough for one person now.
Yeah.
So to have a second person to help with that and to be on top of the 6 that will be fee-based, plus all the other record keeping, everything goes through attendance. If they don't have attendance, we don't have their attendance, that's a loss of money for us.
Right.
Because they still turn in their voucher to us. So
Yes, we
collect
have the
money from the
vouchers
state.
that we have to collect, and we have to keep track of their attendance.
But these are non-Title I attendance records though, right?
No, they're still,
They're just school records.
So
It's-
if I am enrolling a kid at Cypress Ridge Elementary for a
Right.
fee-based program,
right.
and I'm paying that monthly fee, I'm paying it to somebody who is funded by Title I dollars,
Only half.
only half, but they're half funded by Title I dollars, but it's not a half of a Title I kid. None of those kids potentially
No,
get
no, no,
Title I.
Other kids they
It would be
service
the,
are.
there would be schools, like say, the person that is, right now it's ESSER, But later on, we'll make sure that they have equal amounts so that it's 50/50. So there are those that are fee-based and those that
Because this
aren't.
person will also be looking at attendance records for Beverly
Everything,
Shores.
everything.
Okay.
Yes. Because we've had
I don't know what it is.
So how many kids are in a class?
20.
20, okay, so I was also trying to do a little operational math. Okay, so if you get 20 kids,
You just asked
I know,
you
right.
just asked how many kids?
yes.
He did.
That's what we were doing, a little sidebar over here.
20, there are 20, and typically for our inclusions, we do our best to reserve 4 seats for ESE students, and the other 16 are gen ed.
So
And
20,
there's an assistant in the room, correct?
There is a teacher and a teacher assistant all day, every day.
you get a teacher plus an assistant. So the 20 kids times $300 a month, that's $6,000 a year that a kid will pay,
Mhm.
times 10 months, $60,000. What's the
The voucher money.
voucher money comes in, covers part of that? Okay.
And then the other half
So then the
year.
rest of this, so this will sustain the teacher's salary plus benefits, TA salary plus benefits. Do these people go to specials or they're with these kids all day?
They go to specials now, right, Jackie? Yes, that's something that we worked in a few years ago,
Okay. So that's something that the general fund is essentially,
helping to.
right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because the idea is to have the students on their campus. Let's hope that they're going to choose the school that they're going to want to go to. What better way to transition them than to have them already be comfortable where they're going?
Can I go back for a second and check your numbers just one second? To
Sure.
make sure I understood what you
Mhm.
said. So we have 16 kids at $300.
20 kids.
No,
Oh, because
16.
the
16.
Oh, only 16 of them are.
Oh, because
Which is-
ESE kids
which
would
is
be, but
57.6.
kids would be-
ESC get weighted differently.
Which is $57,600. How is that sustainable if you got a teacher and a teacher's aide just alone?
Because the voucher is.
The voucher does the
We're not
other
counting that
half.
funding.
What voucher?
The state.
The state gives a voucher for half of the day.
The state made a commitment to free.
I thought we were talking about non,
They
We
still,
are.
all
You still get it.
all kids get vouchers. Everybody. Everybody in the
single
world,
VPK kid gets
every
a voucher
4-year-old.
for
how much is that?
I don't know, you just take,
About
you go
300.
sign up for it and you give it to the
Oh,
school.
you get 300 a month.
It's 2,046 per child, but we're getting a raise next year, and I don't know the exact
getting a
one.
raise.
2,400 what?
$2,046.
$2,046 this year per student.
Every single body.
Yes,
Every
doesn't
So if
matter.
you got the 300, why are we charging another 300?
That's only for half a
Because that
day.
doesn't pay for the teacher's salary.
What part doesn't?
If you only collect $30,000 from that kid.
If you got the same 300, which is exactly what this is,
That's,
then,
and a teacher and a TA.
no. Every single human gets 300
No, all the VPKs.
times 16 times 12?
No.
No, not
They don't go over summer.
How many
10
months?
months.
10 months?
Well, it's
Based on hours.
$2,046.
The whole program, the whole
$2,000.
540 hours.
Yeah, it's based on hours.
Hours, $46.
It's
Which
just
is
like
16,
your
Which is how many
FTE.
funds?
You know,
Has
you
the
get
budget been done
you know,
on
you get
this?
$7,500 a
Yes, we-
student.
We did everything with Mr. Ward before we brought this to you.
So your 16 kids will pay a total of $32,736. No, the state will pay for those kids $32,736.
Give me that one, because I've obviously got the wrong number of days.
That's for the 16 kids, but we'll also collect the voucher on the 4 others, right?
Yes, the voucher.
32,000 what, Mark?
Okay, well, the 16 kids are at $32,736, but then we have the voucher kids, 4 more. I mean, the ESE or Title I or whatever it is.
They get a voucher as well, right?
The
The ESC?
ESC do not, but we get
Higher rate.
2,000 something per ESC student as well.
So another $8,000.
Is the kid that's using the voucher, are they paying the $300 a month?
It depends. If they're fee-based.
All right, I'd love to sit down and walk you through this one.
They're a Title I
I'm only on kid
school,
number
no.
5 of
If
this.
they're non-Title I, then
Yes.
yes. If they progress, yes. There's no other way to.
We're getting the 300, plus we're charging them 300.
Yes,
If they're
because the state is
non-Title
only
I.
giving us
Yes.
$40,000 in voucher money for that classroom.
But for a program that was non-title, we were getting 57.6, right? We're getting 57,600 at 300 a month.
How are you
So
getting,
By
I
the time
got
you add the
40,
parents' payments.
Huh?
By the time you add the parents' payments.
No, that is, that's
How
the
do you get
$300 a
40,
month,
50?
times
Yeah, right,
16.
right. Mhm.
So in a Title I, they get 32,000, only the 300. And in a non-Title I, they're getting the 300 that everybody gets, plus they're paying another $300. So a non-title is worth $89,000 to that classroom.
Right. For a teacher and an aide.
Title I is, and the other one is supplementing the.
We pay the
Yeah,
half.
Title I pays for the
Yeah,
other
half of.
part if they're Title I.
They're paying the other $300 a month extra?
Title I pays
Title
for a 0.5 of a teacher and a 0.5 of a TA.
Okay, I think that's clear as mud to me.
And it's confusing, believe.
So,
Okay,
now
well,
that we've cleared that up.
Well, adding those two together makes more sense
That's
and it's
right.
sustainable.
Right.
That's right.
That's right.
That's where I was trying to get to.
So, okay, now thinking about the advantage of that, now you get a certified teacher versus a lot of these private providers, it is
Yes.
some sort of assistant or,
Correct.
So there's that benefit. But I'm kind of thinking about the payment system. Okay,
Okay.
so paying weekly is an option.
It is.
But I think paying weekly in most of the Claremont schools is not an option, that it's always done monthly.
Well,
Is that right?
what we were, when we, actually, we spoke to Kim Repass, and she said we could set it up either way with
Right.
school bucks.
But I'm wondering if it's less work if somebody only has to pay once a month.
They can make multiple payments all at one time if they want
The
to.
school bucks is like the lunch thing, so
Right,
they
right.
could set that up to be weekly or monthly depending on what they want.
Right, I
Right.
understand, but I
It
guess I'm
is
just
more,
wondering.
you are more subject to default though, if it's monthly, in my opinion.
Well, some people can't afford it.
Right.
They pay it by the month.
They need Friday to Friday.
So
to
they can
Friday.
pay more if they want, or they can pay weekly if they want.
I was just wondering if I guess there's still no eliminating a whole position to collect money from.
Oh, no.
Well, to be honest with you,
yeah.
I think the position is a great idea, because when we did it in the past, the bookkeeper at the school had to collect the money. And that meant, after it got to be a real hassle, on Mondays at about 10 o'clock, this list would appear on my desk of kids who hadn't paid, and it came to a point where I had to sit and call parents and say, I'm sorry, and then they tell me things like, well, I paid $10 this morning. So it needs to be, there needs to be someone to
Yeah,
collect the money.
so we're talking 96 kids are paying fee-based for the year. So we're basically creating a position to collect money from 96 people.
And also the attendance and everything else, because you got to remember.
Plus the attendance of 96 people,
Well,
because they're already doing the attendance.
We've
themselves.
had approximately 20 with one fiscal assistant and one resource teacher. That's what we've had. And when I get to the end, I'm kind of ruining my big bang, but we're doubled. And so, if we've had one teacher and one fiscal assistant for 20 classes, it would make sense to have two fiscal assistants and two resource teachers for 40. It's 40 classes. So that's quite a bit that you have to consider and they're purchasing too. I mean, it's not just being fiscal, they're processing POs, materials and supplies, the curriculum, if they're doing field trips, there's quite a bit to be done. And all of that is because of having the fiscal assistants taken off of the bookkeepers at the schools.
I'm okay. I mean, because the parents are essentially paying for the creation of that position, because it's fee-based, and our general fund dollars are not
Yeah,
going towards
right.
creating this position to collect money from
Right.
these kids. So is there a surcharge when you use My School Bucks? You know, like RevTrack, you got to pay an extra 3.61%. Does that happen on School Bucks?
I think it does.
Mr. Ward, school bugs fee?
Additional, yes, there's a fee to that, and I'm speaking from experience with with ELC. When I pay my ELC payment for my student, I have to pay the little percentage fee too. I forget what it is, but it's the same thing as a lunch fee.
Okay.
It's a very small percent, I believe, isn't it? Like 1 or 2%? It's
And
1 or 2%?
And like I always say, we can always build that into the 300. Now
So-
you're paying 300.
Well, my question was,
$10.
where I was going on this one, if it's cheaper to use My School Bucks than RevTrack, why are we using RevTrack?
RevTrack ties directly into our internal account system.
Oh, I see.
Remember, RevTrack's more than just collecting the money, it's all the storefront stuff too. So when you go into the school's website and you click on their store to buy their stuff,
Right.
you're actually in RevTrack stuff.
Right, but so I was browsing around School Bucks last night to find out all the features of this, and I did discover that you can set up school store stuff in there too. That you can have the pull down menu, and I want to buy this T-shirt, or I want to buy this field trip, or I want to buy VPK fee, so that if the fee's only like 1 or 2%, and we're already having people use it for their school lunch money, I guess snack money at this point, then why not have it all in one place?
Because
It doesn't tie to the
because
internal
RevTech
accounts.
goes directly into Skyward. They interface directly together.
I see.
I do not want to meet the person that handles all that part and telling a 4-year-old they can't come to school.
I know.
It's not fun.
That's going to be
No.
a mean person.
Is there an auto pay option? Can it just automatically deduct from the account every month?
My school box?
Yeah.
I think it has an auto pay.
Can a parent set that up?
Yeah.
Just
Yeah.
recurring monthly
I'm
payments?
not sure, I have to look into it.
At least you can for lunch.
Yeah, you can.
Mine does for lunch.
So if we encourage
Even though
folks
it's
to do
free.
that, then that would probably be,
Yes,
you know,
better.
maybe less work, because
Mhm.
they're not gonna forget to pay. you
Right.
know?
Okay.
Very good.
And
So-
one more
Questions?
slide?
One more slide.
One more slide.
It's the best slide.
It is the best slide.
Kept
Are we-
watching this thing. Am I missing?
There we go.
Okay.
So, I wish it had sound because this is wonderful and we would all be jumping up and down. VPK units have nearly doubled in 2 years. In 2021, we had 23 units. This year, we have 31. Next year, with this proposal, we would have 40 units. All elementary schools would have their own VPK class on their campus. This could be a first for Lake County schools. So we hope you want to make history with us.
Very nice.
She did it.
Oh, thank you. Could you do that a little louder? Katie's watching. Thank
Very-
you.
very nice.
Thank you very much. Yes. You have another question.
Oh.
You're not done yet.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Okay, so I'm back on school bucks.
School bucks.
So the district has an option of enabling e-checks. Have we done that? Is that an option? So I'm thinking, okay, if I don't have a credit card and I can't bring you cash, if I'm in maybe that particular demographic where I'm going out to get a money order, then, am I able to use an e-check to pay?
So I have to do some research on that. I don't know. Finance office does not do My School Bucks. That's done with the ELC program,
Okay.
and it's done with the food service program. So
All
we're
right.
not really involved in that, but I can find out.
Yeah,
I can
because
find
that
out
section of
more
the website, check with your school district to see if they've enabled e-checks.
Sure.
So I guess the option does exist, but I just don't know if we have.
We can look into that.
Okay. All right, thanks.
Is that it? I thought you said two.
Okay, so truly, okay, you get one grace period for late payment, and after that, you're kicked out, you don't get any more opportunities.
They need to, so we've talked about that. And if they can have it right away, there's going to be habitual people that
Sure.
put it off. And so, yes, if they can pay the next time, but what they have to do is be able to pay the last time and this time,
Right.
or else it does become a habitual problem.
Like, I'm just wondering about the person who forgot to go pay,
Yeah.
and then 3 days later, they're like, oops, that was due 3 days ago.
Yes.
They go pay it, so the
Yeah.
next time, are they out, or they're?
Will be
they're still-
reasonable. I mean, it's as long as they can get it in there, I would say within that week,
Okay.
yes. If it's going to continue,
Yeah, I guess I'm just wondering how the policy is written.
and we will make sure that it is very clear
Okay.
with the policy. We haven't got the policy because we want to make sure you all
Right,
were
right.
on board with this
Well, of
before
course
that.
they're gonna be on board, right?
It wasn't the kids that were late a week that were getting kicked out.
Yeah, right.
Okay.
It was a much longer.
Much,
process.
much,
Because
yeah.
I think most of the VPK programs will
Yeah.
assess a late fee, they haven't kicked you out.
Well, we haven't charged since
right.
we did, which was a long time ago.
A long time ago. But I know that's something we considered with Care Here whenever we had that audit, that we would charge a late fee if people would miss an appointment or something.
Yeah,
So I don't
maybe
know if
that's
something to
something
consider.
we.
Well, I would
We
check
could
with
consider.
the charters. I mean, they're the ones who are doing it right now. If they
Yeah.
have any policies on late fees, I would
Right.
maybe just adopt those for now.
Yeah,
Right.
that's a good suggestion.
It would be nice to be proactive and we know it didn't work before, so figure out.
Exactly,
avoid
we're
that.
trying something a little bit
Yeah,
different.
we appreciate it.
Okay, thank
It's a fun
you.
goal. Thank you. I've lost my agenda. Board member comments. Mr. Mathias.
I'm all good.
Mrs. Cunningham.
I'm all good, except I want to give a shout out to Mr. Ward. I received a phone call on Friday from a board member in another district. She was perusing our website. She was so excited about our transparency that she called me up to tell me what a great idea she thought it was, and that they were going to try and have something similar to it in Marion County. So kudos to you, sir.
That's cool.
Some-
I am good.
Okay.
Here's your friendly reminder, we've entered the last grading period of the year, so put on your roller skates, buckle up. I know it's going to go by in a whirl, especially as we start diving into all the testing and all the end of the year activities, and before I know it, these kids will be out for summer. So here it is.
Finish strong.
Finish strong. Finish strong. No angry April.
No angry.
Amazing April it will be.
That's awesome, amazing. I have nothing either. Superintendent?
No, hope everybody had a great spring break, and if you'll remember the week before, we had a lot going on that week. We celebrated our Rookie Teacher of the Year, who was Lee Foraker from East Ridge High School, and our Support Employee of the Year, who was Sean Smith from Eustis Middle School. So congratulations to them, and to all of our Steam Bowl. I know a lot of us had a chance to go out and visit the Steam Bowl that week. That was always exciting, and so congratulations to all those students that participated and everybody who made that happen.
Perfect. Mr. Johnson? All right, meeting adjourned.